Okay, everybody, thank you for your patience. It is 4:07 on March 27th, and I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'll go through and do roll call of planning commission members present. Howard Tritz.
Here.
Abby Dahlman.
Here.
Joey Edwards.
Here.
Lupe Bobadilla. And Jamie Seifer. Okay, and county commissioners, Commissioner Mudge here. Commissioner Marcella is not available this evening, and Commissioner Fiedler.
Here.
I do think we have a change or addition to the agenda.
We do. We need to add file 2404.
2304.
Oh, 20. Gosh, I should know. 2304. The Conrad Lindis CUP application. And I'm going to let Bryce, when you get to that, but if we could add that to new business, maybe for the very first item.
Okay. Any staff or board updates?
Oh, no, I don't think so tonight. I don't think that we've got, I think that maybe watch, we're gonna be working on OHV coming up. We'll be bringing the ordinance to the board on April 4th, but we have information online about that. Short-term rentals, we're gearing up to give out cease and desist letters to non-compliant, and continuing to do some work on short-term rental, and then we do have more development applications coming in. Bryce and I've conducted several pre-app meetings. We probably have a dozen applications that are kind of in the works that we probably will see applications from in the next couple months. And I think those are probably the only updates that I have, unless anybody has any questions or anything. We are asking DOLA about maybe doing another training, like we do kind of annually. So, but they're trying to get through the legislative period and some new grants. So they're hoping to maybe be able to look at something in a month or so with us.
Okay. We'll move right down to the newly added file number 23-04, Conrad Lindis CUP application.
Yep, so happy to give you a little update on that. That file was noticed and posted for a meeting today. But as they were working through the file, for those of you that aren't familiar, this is for an outfitter and guide permit for the Lindis land parcel, which is better known as the Chalk Falls area. Similar or the same access point as the Climax Revival file as you're seeing tonight. Anyways, CDOT has had some concerns, and so they requested a traffic study. And so while that traffic study is being conducted, Mr. Lindis has requested that the file be tabled until at least the April 10th meeting. And we'll decide from there and see if we have the right amount of work to make a decision then.
Okay, so the request is to table file 23-04 to April 10th. Do we have any discussion or questions? Ms. Conrad?
Oh, you're muted.
It doesn't show muted. You don't show muted, but we cannot hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. As far as the traffic study goes, I think it's incorrect that we use the same access as Climax Revival. Access that's used by the guides to get to the Chalk Creek Falls is the turnout that's on Highway 91, about 1,075 feet northeast of the mile marker. So it's the pullout, the parking lot on the side of the road that's used for access, not the same access that Climax Revival will be using. At least that's my understanding is he's going to be using the Forest Service road.
Okay, thank you.
But otherwise, if you want, I'm happy to table it.
Great. Do I have a motion to table?
I'll make a motion that we table 23-04 until April 10th.
David second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Now we'll move down to file 22-35 and 22-36. This is for 1719 Poplar Street, multifamily. It's a CUP and a site plan review. We will open both of these at the same time. And I just realized I don't have my opening statement. I'm sure I can find it. Sorry, just 1 second, guys.
Sorry, but I don't know if there's a way for me to direct chat Conrad. Conrad, I don't know if that means that I'm not needed today. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I just sent you an email. Thanks a lot for showing up, though. I owe you.
Of course. Of course. We'll talk soon. Thank you all. Bye.
Well, I have a couple. I have one for a CUP. And I have one for a site plan, so I'll just have to read them together, or I can go between them. Okay, I think I can figure it out.
Okay. Sorry about that. I usually keep them up.
Okay, do I need to read it one each, or can I read them in the same?
I think you can do
Can I just
them,
reference them together?
I think you could reference them together. I don't think there's anything within there that would be just the code sections, but site plan is 316. Or 311. Just the code sections that you're gonna reference.
Okay, well then this site plan review one I have is not correct. So I just need to say 3.61F and 3.11.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. The Lake County Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners will now conduct a joint public hearing. This statement I'm reading shall be incorporated into and made a part of the record on these proceedings. The Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners have jurisdiction to conduct a joint public hearing on a conditional use permit application and a site plan review under section 3.6.1 and 3.11 of the Lake County Land Development Code. The purpose of this hearing is to consider whether the conditional use permit application and the site plan review should be approved. In considering that matter, the commission will address the approval criteria set forth in sections 3.6.1F of the Lake County Land Development Code. The procedure to be followed in this hearing is as follows. Members of the commission and the board will disclose if they've had any ex parte communications regarding the file. 2, the county staff will make their initial presentation. 3, the applicant may then make their own presentation. 4, after that, any other persons either supporting or opposing the application may present evidence. 5, supporting and opposing witnesses may be questioned by the commission and the board. Once questioning is concluded, no further questioning is permitted unless granted by the chair. 6, the applicant may then present any rebuttal evidence. The parties and witnesses are asked not to submit redundant, irrelevant, or cumulative evidence. If someone has already made the point that you wish to make, please simply say so. The chair will also require that all comments be made to the Planning Commission and the board, and that there be no dialogue between the applicants and members of the audience. At the conclusion of the evidentiary portion of the hearing, the chair will entertain a motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, and the commission will discuss and weigh the evidence. Then there will be a motion to close the discussion phase of the joint public hearing. The Board of County Commissioners will then retire from the meeting, and the chair of the Planning Commission will entertain a motion on the application. The motion may take the form of one of the following recommendations. 1, approve the application with no conditions. 2, approve the application with recommended conditions. 3, approve the application with newly identified conditions. Or 4, deny the application. The planning director will make record of any substantial discussion on the motion and include that in the record with the recommendation of the commission. The commission's recommendation will be in the form of a statement of motion. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the commission or to the form or substance of these proceedings? Hearing none, I will now ask each planning commission member and then each county commissioner if you've had any ex parte communication to disclose, and if so, please disclose it now. Howard Schutz.
None.
Joey Edwards.
None.
Abby Dahlman.
None.
Heather Lynn, none. Commissioner Munch.
None.
And Commissioner Fiedler.
None.
Great. Okay, county staff will now make initial presentation.
Thank you. So these two applications are being considered concurrently. This is application 22-35 for a conditional use permit, and the concurrent application, application 2236 for the site plan review. This project is being called the Mine Shaft Project, located at 1719 Poplar Street. This is a multi-use building consisting of 2 floors of residential apartments, and on the ground level, a small cafe space. The property is located here on Poplar Street, with Highway 24 here, Mountain View Drive to the north, and Poplar to the west. These 2 access points that we are currently in use are going to have to be taken out, demoed, and restored, and those 2 access points will be taken out as part of this redevelopment. So off of Highway 24 and Mountain View Drive, with the sole access now being Poplar Street or Poplar Way. We will potentially be looking at renaming this section of the road in here. The proposal on the multi-unit is what is the purpose of the conditional use permit of this use. And what the applicant is looking to do is to put 8 units of what they have referred to as workforce housing in the 2nd and 3rd floor. It is important to know that the development proposal was granted a variance in September last year, by which they were able to increase the density by 50% to the 8 units. They were also allowed relief from setback as well as diminished parking. Code requires 2 parking units per unit. The applicant went to the Board of Adjustment and asked for consideration that these were going to be small 500 to 600 square feet units, that they would be advertising to single or couples, and they would market them with only 1 parking space available. The Board of Adjustment granted that variance as well as relief from setbacks, and we'll look a little bit at that in their plan here in just a moment. So we're gonna go ahead and start just with some of the different items in the site plan to begin with. This application was duly noticed. It was published and mailed and posted. We did not receive any public comment back on the application. It was referred to the Office of Emergency Management, Public Works, the Sheriff, Public and Environmental Health, the Lake County Assessor, the Leadville Lake County Fire Rescue, City of Leadville, Parkville Water, and Leadville Sanitation. Any comments that we received weren't overly substantial, but they are included within the staff report. So we're going to go ahead and just talk about some of the different items here. So first on the review of the application was the site snow storage. So you will see that evidenced here in the green. Along with that, code allows for a snow management plan So the applicant has provided a snow management plan, which has just what the removal plan is and the procedure for on-site. I did bring those if anybody wants to take a look at them, but it's just a series of different activities, how they are notified, what their snow team configuration is, what the removal assets that they have are, and just how they activate the procedures on site. Staff will just mention to the applicant, there's also a possibility that we learned about that Public Works sometimes also allows the removal of snow from a site and provides opportunities for storage off-site, if that would ever have any ability to support the site as well. So I don't think that there was any discussion in the removal and procedures plan, but that is a possibility that Public Works provides that opportunity for some other commercial properties. The parking, the ADA, the loading and delivery. So the parking that was reduced was only for the multi-use. The site has 14 parking spots, and 8 of those are taken for housing. One is for, they indicated there would be 1 employee within the ground level use, and then that leaves the other 5 spaces for the cafe space. Code allows 3 seats per space, so the cafe could have up to 15 seating spaces or seats, and the plan shows 14. So that is the ratio of seating to, here's the seating plan that demonstrates, oops, I'm so sorry, right here, the 14 seats within the cafe area. So there is in surplus of 1 as far
One
as
per
the
2
seats.
seats.
It's 1 parking spot per 3 seats. Then there was, we were concerned about the accessibility of the site and how we would get loading in, as well as, I've gone too far, the loading and deliveries. Oh, I'm sorry, where's that? I'm on the wrong page that I had them. Kind of show, there we go. You can kind of see now they've demonstrated how they can get in and out of the site for both the trash as well as loading and unloading freight and deliveries. So both of these have been depicted on the site. So whereas it's still going to be a pretty tight maneuvering, it does show that the site would not be gridlocked with those access points. So one being the deliveries, the other being the garbage truck being able to come in and with the way that it loads, and then being able to go back off-site. We also wanted to make sure that both of these lanes did not encroach on to the other, and their engineering has provided proof of that, and which has been reviewed by the county engineer as well. Lot setbacks. So this demonstrates the existing building and what it would look like if the zone district, the business zone district setbacks had been imposed. You can see that the existing building that's there right now would not have been in compliance as well. Those setbacks have been reduced to allow for the redevelopment of the site. The existing building that is here is going to be demolished and replaced with a new structure, as well as this retaining wall. And so the new setbacks that have been allowed are reduction from 50 feet on Mountain View to 10, and then the reduction on Poplar to 18. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But those variances were granted by the Board of Adjustment. We did ask them to provide a signage that we didn't have previously. They have provided all of the signage for the site. The retaining walls, The retaining wall along Mountain View Drive, again, is planned to be removed. And now they have redone the retaining walls that they do not encroach into the right-of-way and have been repositioned. There are some still outstanding items on the public storm infrastructure, and those don't really need to be addressed today, other than to say there is a condition within the suggested conditions to address that between the applicant bringing forth some information, and then we'll review that with the county engineer. But we have made notice of those items here in the report. If you have any concerns or questions, the applicant could answer those for you, I'm sure, but we have addressed those within the conditions. All the proposed on-site utilities have been noticed and put on the plan. The fire marshal has approved the proximity of fire hydrants. We do ask that they confirm that the gravity sewer service is feasible for the proposed building with Leadville Sand. We did get a will serve from Leadville Sand, but we just wanted them to confirm that as well. Under the Land Development Code, Section 6, public improvements are required based on the necessity to address anticipated impacts. And to that end, the applicant is putting in a sidewalk along the north boundary, which then adds connectivity to the improvement that Taco Bell provided. So they do show that detail here. The other item that is going to need to be improved is bringing Poplar to a local road standard. This remains a little bit of an unknown right now due to snow and surveying. There's a possibility that it might, the other thing I think is important to mention, a local roadway is a 50-foot wide standard. Because of the way that this narrows, it may not be possible to get a full 50 feet. So staff has offered a condition of up to at a minimum of 45 feet. But this actual dimension still has some area of review that needs to be done. If in fact the applicant is potentially correct in thinking that they've been able to demonstrate that right of way and that it's not going to further impact the setback, and that 18 feet can be achieved with their new construction, then they'll be able to move forward as planned. If we determine through their continued look at this that we need some additional space for that right of way, then they may have to come in and readjust their variance to allow for that, or to ask for a variance to adjust that setback. And I think that the applicant's prepared to talk about that a little bit. Again, nothing that we're going to be able to resolve this evening, but we definitely have put place within the conditions to allow for that to be resolved. Let's see. I think, the mountain, staff had spoken about needing to do this, the way this Mountain View Drive dedication had been done was just by a dedication plat. When that was done in, I think about 1995, we didn't have really a process called doing something by a dedication plat. And so we were a little concerned of how do we plat this? This parcel is also not platted, and typically we don't allow development on unplatted parcels. But staff worked with our legal counsel, and we arrived that we can do what's called a subdivision exemption plat, an administrative review, which is not anywhere near as onerous as a minor subdivision. And so I think the biggest takeaway is that we can work through any question that staff had about having to plat this by virtue of a minor subdivision. We can actually do that by a lot line adjustment through a subdivision exemption process that's administrative. So we can resolve any outstanding issues about making sure that this dedication and platting the parcel can be taken care of. and it won't require a public hearing process. It is an administrative plating process, just a boundary line adjustment. The applicant has provided a boundary survey, which identified that the parcel got shifted about 5 feet to the west from the previously presumed location of the east and west lot lines. And that also has a bearing on the Poplar Street right-of-way, which the applicant might talk about just a little. Again, these kind of aspects are things that can be reviewed administratively with engineering, and we can resolve those prior to a building permit. Building design and scale. The applicant indicates that the scale and design of this building will be consistent more with the rail yard project and the type and scale of buildings that have been proposed within that development. There is certainly a change in the area that is happening. The properties to the south might not orientate quite the same way. The main entrance, whereas code says the main entrance should face the street that has the entrance, orientation of the lot is not well served to have the entrance facing Poplar. And so we would just suggest that the orientation really is the best layout of the building. They have provided a photometric survey showing that the site will not be overly illuminated and not unnecessarily cast shadows. Again, making sure that we're staying dark sky compliant. The site landscaping, they have provided professional landscaping within their set of plans. Staff is just suggesting that it might be nice to have a landscape easement that would buffer Highway 24 from the parking area, but it is a suggestion that staff's provided. The traffic study was conducted and submitted and has been reviewed by the county engineer with no noted need for any kind of improvements. The soils review can be done prior to building the building permit. And I think everything else there is inclusive. The only thing that staff would offer then is just to go over the conditions, the suggested conditions of approval. Number one is just a condition regarding Chapter 10 and a driveway design, just to make sure that that has been reviewed prior to building permit. Number two is, again, just stating that the Poplar Street right-of-way improvements, that the new site plan will show the right-of-way dedication to the extent possible, but not less than 45 feet. Again, recognizing just the narrowness in that area and what is possible. The number three, I would just ask that number three, everyone make a slight change to the lot setback along Poplar Street instead of will. Change that to may need to be reconsidered by the Board of Adjustment prior to the issuance of a building permit due to the required additional right-of-way. So once we determine exactly what impact that right-of-way is going to have, then the applicant will be able to decide if they need additional relief from the 18 feet that they've been granted. So that's just a may at this point. Number four, again, I would suggest that you might want to change shall to may, or at your discretion decide. That just says the applicant shall pursue a landscaping easement from CDOT for shrubbery to separate the parking lot from the other side of the property line. Number five, the applicant shall survey the rim and invert of the inlet on the east side of Poplar, as well as the downstream manhole on the west side of Poplar. The proposed drainage improvement needs to connect to this pipe, and the county engineer will need to review and understand the results. So again, just those drainage management review with engineering. So those are things that we can take care of and make sure prior to building permit have been taken care of. The public improvements cost estimate will need to be reviewed and approved by the county engineer. So just like in a subdivision agreement, improvement agreement, we have a development agreement, and they have provided their estimate of cost for these public improvements, and those are just reviewed by the county attorney. Number seven, a development agreement shall be approved and signed by the applicant and the Board of County Commissioners and required prior to the issuance of a building permit. Number 8, the drainage plan comments and questions by the county engineer shall be addressed, and the plan shall be signed and stamped by a Colorado professional engineer prior to the issuance of the building permit. Number 9, an overlap grading plan shall be submitted in the building permit with the building permit application. Number 10, the applicant shall supply a reevaluation of the impervious lot coverage that excludes any right-of-way dedications on Mountain View Drive and Poplar Street. Just for clarification, code says that that can be up to 67%, and we just want the applicant to make sure that that hasn't been affected by that change. Number 11, I would just ask everybody to delete that. That's what I was talking about. We no longer need to plat that by virtue of a minor subdivision. We can do that by a lot line adjustment. And then number 12, just like in every application, all representations and statements made by the applicant in his application and in hearing shall be considered as conditions of approval unless modified by other conditions of approval. And so those are the site plan conditions. Then on the multi-family for the conditional use permit, I will just offer that one of the really strong reasoning behind the allowance of being able to basically double the density. I think I said 50%, but it's actually, they were able to double the density of what's allowable by code. And, really why they did that was because of the applicant's desire to highlight that the purpose behind building these units were to support workforce housing. And we are all very aware of our need for that. And so that really drove their decision in allowing the ability to grant the variance. And to that end, they also gave direction as one of their conditions of approval that their approval was conditional upon the conditional use permit, and their variance was contingent upon the site plan review. But then they also strongly wanted staff to make sure that a condition carried into as a recommendation to the use. And so to that end, number 1 of the suggested conditions are the conditional use permit is conditional upon an approved or conditionally approved site plan review. And number 2, the developer shall work with the Leadville Lake County Regional Housing Authority to determine a way to maintain and ensure the housing units remain as stated in the application, affordable workforce housing units. Number 3, short-term rental will be prohibited. Number 4, development agreement shall be approved and signed by the applicant and the Board of County Commissioners and recorded prior to the issuance of a building permit. And then again, number 5, all statements made by the applicant in the application and hearing shall be considered as conditions of approval. And I think that pretty much concludes anything that staff has in the review, but happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Do any of the planning commission or county commissioners have any immediate questions for staff before we allow applicant to make their presentation?
I just have a question. I think, and we talked about this, but I wonder if, for the sake of public information, you might be able to touch on why exactly that you reference the site, the suitability of the site for the location of the building does not necessarily conform with like extending the downtown feel, and it's on the highway. Can you just give an overview? I believe it has to do with the topography of the site, but is there an answer as to why the building had not had the building originally been proposed on the highway, like right on the highway?
I know I'm sorry, Sarah, okay. Really. No, the building, had the building previously been proposed right on the highway?
Yeah, I think I think I made up an answer in my head as to the topography of the site and
Oh, why it's situated where it is?
in that northwest side, it kind of drops off, and was that a cost prohibitive or safety concern with the placement of the parking versus the building? as far as that was concerned.
I'll let the applicant
Maybe,
answer that.
okay, maybe that's a question for the app.
I'll
Great.
let the applicant answer that.
Let's start with the application, or the applicant's presentation, and if you want to address that in that portion, but, or we can come back to that question.
Would you like
That's
to?
part of, are you presenting?
Yeah, I can.
Okay,
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
yeah, if you can just state your full name, that'd be great.
Sure, my name is Morgan Law, and I live at 134 West 8th Street. I am the architect for the project, working for Matt Delaney and Adam. Yeah, I'll just give you a little bit of background, and then I can dive into that specific question, because I think it's a good one. And I think, yeah, thank you staff for that presentation. It was very informative and helpful. I'll try to keep this super short, but I think, overall, the site is Bermuda Triangle, and it's over 13 years. I've never been a part of a project with a site this complicated and confusing and restrictive in certain ways. So I was approached by the owners to make some modifications to the existing building, which you saw in that first image of the site plan. And we quickly identified that any sort of modification of that building would kind of infringe upon the existing setbacks and therefore require either a variance or a site plan review. We were also told early on by CDOT that unless it was to be used for a garage of some sort, that both of the access points would be taken away on Mountain View and on Highway 24. So I think pretty early on, we started scratching our heads and asking if there was a potential better use for this than just kind of a modified gas station, just because it is kind of the gateway into town. And working with these guys downtown on 311, 313, where we're actually doing a very similar size project. It's 8 kind of affordable units, 500 to 600 square feet upstairs, for potential employees for their business, but also just to fill a need for that more attainable housing model. So, we started talking about that and decided that maybe that would, looking at the comprehensive plan for Lake County, it seemed actually to make quite a lot of sense to do a smaller mixed-use building that allowed for opportunity for commercial space that wasn't Safeway or Taco Bell, but also provide some potential housing and some different housing options than, what's readily available in town for single-family homes for $500,000, whatever. So based on this kind of previous work that we're doing, we got pretty excited about this idea in terms of what would be most appropriate for this site, and it actually aligns really well with the comprehensive plan in terms of the mixed-use aspect, the density, the location, the access to infrastructure and public transportation, access to town. So that's kind of a little bit of background, I guess, on where the actual program developed for the building. Let's see here, sorry, one other point to make on that. Yeah, so to get to Sarah's question, I guess, because I think there's a lot in that, is essentially we felt that setback off of Highway 24 was going to be a bigger hurdle, and it was also the flat part of the site, and it allowed for, squeezing in double lane parking. Most of the sites and projects in Leadville, a lot of it comes down to snow storage and parking. So we wanted to make sure we could really kind of maximize the area for parking to make it work with this kind of mixed use model that we were all excited about and felt like it was appropriate for our community. So by pushing that parking to the southeast to Highway 24, it allows that massive setback off of Highway 24 to become a pretty useful and effective part of the site. And then that also meant that it would require pushing the building to the other flat area of the site to the northwest, where it's kind of pushed now. Due to where Poplar is in Mountain View and the grading, really the only access point that we were left with was this southwest corner of the site. And it's pretty much the steepest. So we had to access the site from that point, and we had to be pretty efficient to where the parking would go from there, both to kind of reduce pervious area, reduce snow storage, reduce costs for parking and maintaining, and to allow the most open space for the actual building. So that kind of pushed us towards this scheme, in which we then asked for a reduction in setback for Mountain View and also for Poplar, which was granted by the BOA for this. I think, just overall, more anecdotally, we have to do something with this site. As of now, it's like barely functioning. It's super dangerous to bike by there and go to the grocery store. I'm always terrified taking my kids across this way. There's a lot of challenges, and I think this is, obviously I'm biased, but I think it's a pretty great solution to creating something more appropriate and lasting versus what there is now. And anyone that comes along is going to have all the same challenges with the site, regardless of the type of building they do. It's, the access, moving the utilities, widening Poplar, completing the infrastructure, adding the sidewalks, accessing the site, creating a drainage plan. All those things will still exist. So I do think this solution, again, kind of came from, the program came from us, but really the site plan and the benefits to the site all came from the past 6 months working with engineers and the county staff and the county engineer to really massage it and make sure it was hitting, and making sure is hitting all the right things, both in terms of the code, but also for the community. So we do have a couple of things that are kind of left on a few boxes that are unchecked, largely around the survey and the inlets and the outlets, but we're fully committed to doing that. Again, I have to drive by this every day, so I don't want to cut any corners with it. And so, we look forward to kind of making those final pieces happen, and happy to answer any questions.
One quick question I had, just because I didn't see it in the information I had, and I could have missed it, is there a floor plan for the units?
There is, we could share that with you guys.
Because I just only saw, like in this packet, there's like a layout of the restaurant, but there's not anything in here that shows the floor plan of the units.
It's definitely something that I can share. It wasn't necessarily part of the application, so we just figured we'd limit it to what was required. But it is, it's 2 stories, 4 units. They all have these amazing kind of west-facing views now with the Taco Bell sign right in the way, but they're all kind of oriented out towards that kind of, and with the grade falling down, I think there'll be some really nice views. So all the circulation runs along the east side. There's basically a hallway there, and the units just take up the whole west side of the building.
And are they studio units? Are they 1-bedroom units?
So the 2 in the middle are studios, and then the 2 on the ends are technically 2 bedrooms. Yeah, I mean, they're small bedrooms, so our thought is that the second bedroom will be storage, home office, place to put your bikes and skis. But yeah.
Studio and 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom?
Yeah, I believe they're upstairs. There's 2 small bedrooms. Yeah, like I'm happy to share that plan.
Do you have that with you?
Yeah,
I
can.
You could email it to the VOCC@gmail.
Okay.
Oh, the VOCC will, sorry.
Super. Okay, sure.
Questions? I'm just gonna go in. Okay.
General, couple, yeah.
Any questions for the applicant? before we dive into?
Nothing yet, I would like to see those plans.
And we don't, do we have anybody on Zoom and or in the public for public comment? Is there anybody on Zoom who wishes to speak on this application? All right, well, I'm just gonna go on, or do you wanna go first?
Sure. I had maybe just a couple of like questions outside the particular application. Just knowing that the area in general has had drainage issues. I just wanted to point that out with, you know, what complaints the city and county are getting in the area, and knowing that,
Those are largely up here.
they're, yeah, but it's cascade. I just, because this has been an issue for application, this is like the third application in the area, from the rail yard to Taco Bell to this, I think. I don't want the issue to continue to get compounded from, you know, to cascade and compound with every application. And I think while any engineered drainage wouldn't change based on this, I wonder if the effectiveness or some overview of it doesn't need first, like, the city's involvement in the rail yard actually getting up to date on their required inspections with the sanitation, and if their designs are being effective, which
Right, there's a question.
impacts the downhill
Right, there's a question of the rail yard drainage,
properties.
which is an interesting question, whether that is working, and whether or not it's having an impact, because that, right, you know, that area right above here has accumulated with a bunch of sand and debris that's gonna be cleaned out, but that is causing some drainage in that area. But the engineered stormwater drainage plan that came in from Taco Bell,
Mhm.
I would say that both these two developments are going to create a much better, moving forward, stormwater management plan than was pre-existing, but there's certainly some effect happening from across Highway 24 that's impacting an area right here on Poplar, up to the south of the site. And looking to clean that up, but I think that we are looking at having some more discussions just to make sure that the drainage is just being properly managed at the rail yard, and that it's not having an impact that is causing some general concerns in this area.
Okay, so that's just one thing to bring, and then, just a note on that landscaping easement, which is a great idea, and maybe zero scaping or something, because, with the continued snow plowing of the highway, I guess you'd have to ask the city what that routinely looks like, since that is now their annexed jurisdiction, and whether that snow gets plowed onto the highway to be removed or onto the property itself.
Yeah.
I'm sure nothing you haven't thought of,
Yeah, it seems pretty underutilized right now.
nothing to note. That's what I have for, oh, the width in, expansion of Poplar, is that, I'm sorry, how much larger are we requesting? Is that like triangular section there?
Yeah, I think
Drawing?
you can. Do you wanna
Just
kind
to, it really widens that like entry off of Mountain View
do you wanna
Drive.
kind of
Yeah,
show
sure, yeah.
that?
Yeah, it's super confusing.
It
but we
is
can-
confusing.
So basically, we have a boundary survey for Taco Bell. We have one for our property. It's been really challenging. You know, we have like this point of ours, and this point of theirs. But by stitching all of the different drawings together from civil engineers and surveys, the general consensus seems to be that there's about 41 feet. The right-of-way is right now is about 41 feet. So we think that by expanding that, by giving the 7.5 feet that was originally talked about, we're basically up to about, I think we can get to like 48 will be the final width. And it's, again, it's still a little TBD because it's a little unclear, you know, what is going on over here at Taco Bell and how it relates to our points. But again, we have nothing stamped, but by overlaying everyone's drawings, we're fairly confident about the 41 feet. But until, you know, again, until we can just wait until the snow clears out a little bit more and, you know, the pins are in place now for our site and for Taco Bell. So it should be a relatively quick exercise. It's just going to be a lot quicker if we wait for 2 months. So that's what's riding on it, is that it really starts to pinch. You can see the existing, I don't know why I'm pointing with my finger. You can see how it's really getting pinched here, how this area kind of steps out. Whereas back here, the 12 feet of pavement on either side of the center line there's a lot more room for that, and we think it's basically existing at 12 feet on either side. But here it obviously is pinched.
So it would open up to the west a little bit?
Yeah,
Okay.
both, yeah.
Okay.
But more to the west and some to the east. I don't know if this was mentioned, but this is a above ground electric utility pole. And right now it's sitting right at the edge of pavement, which it doesn't meet current code at all, and is pretty dangerous. So we are proposing to relocate that within the site to move it out of the curb and shoulder of the expanded poplar. And that continues over to Mountain View, and then the other line continues over here to the adjacent property, which isn't being proposed to move. So that's the one pole there. So there's a lot going on right here in this corner, but hope to have it clarified here very soon.
Thank you.
I think that back to the drainage point, it is challenging. You know, the site to the south is completely paved. There's no ditch. There's no storm inlet of any kind. So anything, it's obviously a smaller site, but the whole site is just sheeting water down onto Poplar. You know, and then, you know, who knows where it goes from there. But we are obviously trying to address this as best we can by creating this new inlet that'll catch everything from the parking and then bring it back down to this existing storm inlet. The location of this one will change slightly. It's going to get pushed back into the site. The new one will connect to this existing one. And the reason for that is because Taco Bell, when they did their site improvements, actually upgraded the storm inlet. It goes from somewhere over here underneath Poplar and connects to this. So again, by shifting this over, it's changing location and it's changing elevation. But our hope is to put a new one here that connects to this existing one, so we don't have to recreate the work that was just recently done that takes this across Poplar and out to Mountain View.
Right, all of that goes out to Mountain View and shouldn't come out. Thank you.
Yep.
And then were we able to get that?
Oh, yeah, let's see if I got that.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
And for the parking variance, when you were mentioning the requirements of how many spaces per unit is normal code?
So it's normally for multifamily, it's 2 parking spots per unit.
And it doesn't matter how big the unit is.
Right, no, it's just code says multifamily, it's 2 per unit.
Got it.
So that's BOCC
Yes.
at Gmail.
Oh, not at Gmail, at CO.
Oh, is that, sorry.
That's
Address
okay.
Jillian.
At co.link. .co.us.
Shelley, I need some foot more words.
Yeah.
Here, look,
Oh, yeah, good. I'm warmer over here now, so you guys have it down there.
Sure.
Share that warm.
Wings over here.
So that hopefully went through. I guess one disclaimer about these floor plans is that based on the final boundary survey, we actually had to reduce our rectangle by 5 feet off Mountain View. So we kind of just chopped 5 feet off the building. And we haven't really looked at the floor plans that much because obviously this is an important step in that process. So I was just looking at it and we have, on one floor, it's page 4 of the packet that I just emailed. We have 2 studios, 1 bedroom and 1 2-bedroom. And again, we haven't spent very much time on these at all, but they're good for reference. And, if for whatever reason you guys think 2 bedrooms, I think the diversity of units is nice. It's helpful for them not to all be the same, but yeah, again, happy to have a discussion about those.
I wonder if I'm gonna try the email again. Maybe.
Oh, sure.
Here, let me write it down real quick.
Let's see if it's right.
I don't, and also, we won't bind to these floor plans, but I just think it's helpful because if we're talking about 8 studio units or 8 2-bedroom units, that's, in my opinion, a different conversation. So knowing just these numbers is helpful.
Just to clarify, that's per floor, 2 studios, 1 bedroom, 1 2-bedroom. Each floor, okay.
In total, yeah.
Did you have any questions or
Not yet.
discussion items or? Howard, do you have anything?
No, just.
Abby?
No, I guess, no, not now.
And how about Commissioner Fiedler?
Hey, sorry, I'm wrestling with the mute button. No, nothing from me that hasn't been asked already.
Okay.
That's okay. There it is.
Okay. So it's on page 4 of that. So the plan on the right would basically be the 2nd and 3rd floor. And the basic idea is basically just creating that corridor on the east where it's probably a little louder, more traffic, the highway's on the side, and pushing all the units to the west where the views are and where it's hopefully a little quieter. But you can see this has kind of gone through, there's been different iterations. We had like little 2-story units on the ends, but with reducing that kind of rectangle again, now we have a 1-bedroom unit here, studio. Obviously the studios are in the middle where we don't have two sides of light. And then we have our 2 staircases, elevator, and then this large unit is pushed to the north. So that would just be repeated upstairs. Again, nothing is set in stone here, that's for sure.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, and then we have for, okay, I don't think I have any more questions before we go into discussion phase. Everybody comfortable going into kind of discussion? Yeah, I think it's, I'll start. I think it's tough because I know that we need residential, and this does seem like a really complex and restrictive site, and so it seems very forced to try to make it fit residential in addition to commercial. I also have a hard time when I first saw this, just because I feel like this site is one of our prime commercial lots that Leadville has, and we don't have a ton of easily developable commercial lots. So I think we have to be careful about what the future, what our future commercial sections look like. I just think the reality, and part of this is working every day in an office building with apartments up above it, and the parking situation is crazy, and then snow removal is even crazier, and this just seems to be able to manage the snow removal in there seems very rainbows and unicorns to me. So I don't feel very confident that this is going to be easily managed. And for the primary use of this, so if a cafe is really only going to, be a really small little restaurant, which I think is great, to have any kind of additional eating facilities in our town for sure. It just seems the majority of the use of this prime commercial lot is actually residential and not commercial. I think the commercial seems like it's kind of a side plan for this property. So yeah, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around, because yes, I love the idea of us adding housing to the community. I'm just having a hard time understanding why this site makes the most sense for it. And like I said, I think the parking is the really big one for me, and being able to maneuver it all on that street and that site and all of those pieces together. So, and it does make a difference to me that we're talking about 1-bedroom units and 2-bedroom units, just because, again, that's just more humans up above there to try to, even in the parking lot, you do have the one little loading spot to turn around, but I was just envisioning the people who have to come up and see if there's any parking spaces in there. And then if they're not and they drove down, how they're going to turn around. And then what about the cars that came in behind them? I don't know. It just all feels very difficult to manage. Whereas if it was just commercial, you have overnight where it can be plowed out and snow can be removed and things like that just seems so much more manageable to me. So anyway, without really digging into it, I mean, I like the idea. I just feel like the site is really difficult for what they're trying to propose here. That's just some discussion thoughts. Go next.
Can I see the snow removal plan sheet?
I understand exactly what you're saying about the commercial versus residential. The only thing is, right now, the name of the game is residential. Places for people to stay, for the workers to live. And that's big time. I mean, it's very important right now. That's a perfect place for commercial. But we have to have residential. I have to go along with that.
Yeah, I guess I don't necessarily agree with Heather on that. I think how planning's going in general is more and more reduction around parking. I'd hope that because it is so close to a lot of just because there are so many folks that do live nearby, that they would be walking or biking to the commercial space. And I think it solves, or I think it at least provides certainly provides needed housing. And I know the applicant has businesses in town and knows the need. So I think those are things that can be overcome.
It's a site that's gonna require a tremendous amount of organization and communication between tenants and visitors and property owner. It'll be interesting to see how well that gets pulled off. It'll either be a very well-planned success, or on a heavy snow year, a train wreck. The snow storage, I understand completely why it is where it is, but along with Heather, I have no idea how you clear those cars out. There's really no place else for them to park even temporarily, unless they make everybody go over to Safeway for an hour while they plow a lot, which wouldn't make a lot of sense. There won't be any parking available along Poplar. So it's just gonna take, you almost need a full-time property manager to be able to manage that during the winter season. Interesting to see how well that happens. I don't see a better use for the site necessarily. It's just gonna be a lot to manage for somebody.
Agreed.
Yeah, that plan, the layout plan was drawn before you took 5 feet off of that building.
That's post 5 feet being taken off, yeah, it's the
Yeah.
reduced size.
That second bedroom is awful tiny, but still almost guarantees that you've got at least 2 cars, at least 1 unit. Probably 2 cars at multiple units, just because it's a 2-bedroom. But that's what we agreed to, so. And that is definitely, along with the other person's point, that's definitely the way planning is going in Leadville right now, reducing parking. So it would be an interesting experiment.
Amy, did you have any?
I don't really have any other questions or comments. I'm just trying to think about, like what's been permitted across the street at the rail yard with the same kind of concept with the alleyway, and I'm thinking of Poplar as an alleyway, sort of, and that entry, and, I mean, not necessarily coming up with any solutions
Yeah.
to make you feel better, but,
I know.
I do think that,
Stuff over across the street that's been approved so far has garages. You mean as far as their commercial with the?
yeah, the
there's-
commercial on the highway frontage with the residential
Mhm.
above, and like the higher density apartments, I think, that are proposed right along that, sharing the alleyway. I think the apartments have garages. I can't remember what the highway frontage.
I think they're not
required
part
to
of
have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think the name of the game right now is housing, and that's the hot topic. I just hope that it's not just for the sake of improving housing and for the sake of improving it done the right way. And that's, I think, my own sticking point is just that piece of it being set up well. And I do think, I do know the applicant, and I know that, as long as they have it, it probably will be a super tightly run ship, but necessarily a guaranteed forever situation. And I think that has to be considered, because that is a very prominent corner in town. And so if that does not end up getting managed very well, it can be, I think working in that it could, isn't set up well. Yeah.
I was
Anybody
gonna
else?
just
Go ahead.
share that I was recently up in Jackson, and I saw like housing on the second story of even a gas station. And I really think it's like, obviously who's going to want to live above a gas station? Like the fumes, I'm not, what am I trying? I think this specific type of housing has a very specific type of use, right? Like it's not like gonna be a, super long term, maybe a year or two while folks are here in town, and then moving on to a different housing type like single family. So I just think this is kind of, we just have to get creative to get some of these types of units in. Just because it is a pretty distinct, like a studio apartment is not easy to come by. I guess food for thought. It was just an interesting example of just where folks are just trying to figure out new and creative ways to kind of have this kind of housing available in these mountain communities.
Oh, definitely. And I think the residential above commercial is our best way of providing, for sure. I don't think that's, and I apologize, that's not really what I meant by saying that the use is being primarily residential there. It's just that the space and its complexity seems to lend itself more towards commercial. Its zone and prominence seems to be best used commercially. So I just find it odd that it's mostly going to be residential. But I agree that I think residential up above commercial is definitely the best way that we're going to increase housing in Lake County, and same with things like ADUs and stuff like that. So I think those are all in line with what we're trying to do. I just think the site is complex in that way, but Fiedler, I feel like I thought I saw him for a second on mute.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna chime in. I mean, I sort of, again, agree with a lot of the discussion. I mean, I think it's a super challenging site, and that much parking, I mean, that, that sort of tight a parking area. Yeah, but I look around, I mean, even, other homes and areas in town. I mean, yeah, like people have to move their cars to clear snow out. I mean, I had to move my cars at my old house. Like, that's just kind of how it is sometimes. And I don't know, like, I feel like the applicant sort of knows what they're getting into and the management it'll take on that site. So yeah, I guess hearing the discussion, just personally, I'm sort of leaning towards, it's like, yeah, it'll be a management challenge, but lots of people in the country live in places where parking is tight.
Sure.
And they manage. And I mean, not to sound cavalier, I think that's just the reality of moving towards, a bit of a preference for denser development sort of on our kind of city core.
Mm-hmm.
And you still have to fit a taco truck in there somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know where the taco truck is.
That's going to be on the roof.
Any other comments or discussion? Make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And if it's okay with everyone, I would like to table our motion and discussion portion so that we can open up the second file while the commissioners are still in the room, or would you prefer that we?
No, I
Call
thought
them
I was
back.
just gonna, see if that, if you would like that, if you'd like to stay and just keep coming.
What would you prefer?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. So we're going to table this just for a few minutes as far as our discussion slash motion portion of these two files. And while the county commissioners are still in the room, open up our public hearing for file 22-41. I'm sorry, I gotta open this up. I don't know, I definitely don't have one for special events.
Oh, but it's still conditional use for that, so. Except that the use standards are 55.2.
The approval criteria, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, approval criteria, so you'll listen, so it'll be the 3.6.1 plus use standards 5.2.28.
5.2.
Right, so how do I make this? I can make this small on my computer.
You can hide the,
I can just
Zoom
like,
out.
oh, here's what I need to do, hold on to, okay, yeah, let's just, there we go, that'll be better. Okay.
Okay. This is for file 22-41, the Climax Revival Special Event Facilities Conditional Use Permit. The Lake County Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners will now conduct a joint public hearing. This statement I am reading shall be incorporated into and made a part of the record on these proceedings. The Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners have jurisdiction to conduct a joint public hearing on a conditional use permit application under section 3.6.1 of the Lake County Land Development Code. The purpose of this hearing is to consider whether the conditional use permit application should be approved. In considering that matter, the commission will address the approval criteria set forth in section 3.6.1.f and use standards in section 5.2.28 of the Lake County Land Development Code. The procedure to be followed in this hearing will be as follows. Number one, members of the commission and the board will disclose any ex parte communications. 2, the county staff will make its initial presentation. 3, the applicant may then make their presentation. 4, after that, any other persons either supporting or opposing the application may present evidence. 5, supporting and opposing witnesses may be questioned by the commission and the board. Once questioning is concluded, no further questioning is permitted unless granted by the chair. And 6, the applicant may then present any rebuttal evidence. The parties and witnesses are asked not to submit redundant, irrelevant, or cumulative evidence. If someone has already made the point that you wish to make, please simply say so. The chair will also require that all comments be made to the Planning Commission and the board, and that there will be no dialogue between the applicant and members of the audience. At the conclusion of the evidentiary portion of the hearing, the chair will entertain a motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, and the commission will discuss and weigh the evidence. Then there will be a motion to close the discussion phase of the joint public hearing. The Board of County Commissioners will then retire from the meeting, and the chair of the Planning Commission will entertain a motion on the application. The motion may take the form of one of the following recommendations. 1, approve the application with no conditions. 2, approve the application with the recommended conditions. 3, approve the application with newly identified conditions. Or 4, deny the application. The planning director will make a record of any substantial discussion on the motion and include that in the record with the recommendation of the commission. The commission's recommendation will be in the form of a statement of motion. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the commission or to the form or substance of these proceedings? Hearing none, I will now ask each planning commission member and then each county commissioner if you've had any ex parte communications to disclose, and if so, to please disclose them now. Howard Tritz.
None.
Joey Edwards.
None.
Abby Dahlman.
None.
Heather Lind, none. Commissioner Mudge.
I have none.
Commissioner Fiedler. Okay, we'll come back to him. The county staff will now make its initial presentation.
Thank you. So this is file 2241, a conditional use permit for a special event facility and park resort known as the Climax Revival. This is located on the mini plaza and evidenced here on the very nice prepared site plan by the applicant. The property already holds a conditional use permit for a vacation lodge, which approved a 10th Mountain Division light cabin for up to 8 people. The intent of this application is to increase the lodging capacity from 8 to 48 through a variety of additional accommodations. Some that are temporary or seasonal in nature, including campsites with up to 4 additional semi-permanent structures such as yurts, domes, or other tiny home-type structures to be built over a period of 3 to 5 years. The venue aspect of the application is asking for 150 guest density and includes examples of venues like weddings, small music festivals of 150 guests, backcountry cooking classes, movie screenings, hiking and mountain biking trails, educational interpretive events, avalanche education, yoga retreats, adventure recovery, alcohol and substance abuse training, high altitude trail, running camps, corporate leadership retreats, small gatherings to celebrate birthdays, bachelorette parties, Packboro picnics, outdoor industry marketing photo shoots, Sherpa services. And there is something about guiding, skiing, snowshoeing, electric snowmobile, snow bike tours, and those would all be fine as long as they're within the boundary of the private parcel, as stated by the Forest Service. And through our code, you would not be able to do that outside of the private parcel without an additional application. The application was referred to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, Colorado Department of Transportation, Colorado State Forest Service, Colorado Division of Parks and Wildlife, the U.S. Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, Lake County Public Works, Lake County Office of Emergency Management, the Lake County Sheriff, Public Health, the Lake County Fire Rescue, and the Lake County Soil Conservation District. We did get a comment back from the fire marshal that he did show that the area he thought could be managed in the way that it had been provided with by the applicant. However, staff would just say we have not had an opportunity for the fire marshal to respond once that we were able to let him know that the roadway was not going to be enhanced. He even talks about that within his last review of the property. Our original application had some suggestions that the roadway with Forest Service Road 134, which provides access, was going to be improved. And since then, we've received clarification from the Forest Service that that's not the case. So we don't have any comment back from him about that yet. And here is Claire Skeen, Director of Office of Emergency Management. She provided a pretty lengthy review the first time, and then the update from the 27th. I'm going to go ahead and read this into the record because it does have outstanding issues along with it. She does indicate that it says, I still have hesitations about the CUP application and event venue due to the inherent risk of 70 to 150 of people to a backcountry location with limited evacuation routes, and an incident should occur would put a strain on emergency services in Lake County. I still have concerns about efficient evacuation routes. That will always be an inherent hazard with this site, and one that I do not think can be fully mitigated. I appreciate the additions of a helicopter pad. While that greatly increases safety, good base practices should be put in place in the chance of a helicopter being unavailable due to a conflicting call or weather conditions. I would like confirmation that there is an AED on site along with the certified staff. I would encourage the applicant to make sure all staff is trained and certified in CPR and first aid, as well as the full trauma pack. I would like clarification on the role of Lake County Search and Rescue. The applicant mentions for events larger than 100 guests, Lake County Search and Rescue will be invited to attend in addition to the hired security staff. Please explain the invited. Is this a contract for medical service? I would encourage the applicant to work with SAR for medical support if SAR is open to that conversation. Overall, any incident or emergency that happens in this site will automatically strain our emergency services. If there is an event the same weekends as a Leadville Race Series event, another large community event, or just a busy summer weekend, I can easily see our resources stretched thin and having to rely on mutual aid or other resources. Lake County Public Works Emergency Services, Mabel Bogart, says that she still has the same concerns from last time, which she listed out, which included an emergency plan, active stream, natural drainage, stream bed protection, flash flood campers should not set tents within 50 feet of the stream, drainage banks and must-use restrooms, no cat hole, heating within 50 feet of the stream drainage just to ensure water protection, concerns about wetlands, concerns about CDOT access, communication plan, limited accessibility for response time, sanitation concerns, and road concerns. The Lake County Conservation District had stated some other outstanding items. They've all been addressed within conditions of approval. So I'm not going to go too much into them because they have all, staff has suggested ways in which to look at those in terms of a condition. But the one item that wasn't included was the increased accessibility and how unauthorized OHV use in this area would be monitored. That's a non-issue because again, we're not increasing the degree of accessibility into the area. And I just realized I have the wrong staff report. So I am giving, if I could have just one moment. Oh wait, no, I must have it one. Yeah, never mind, I'm gonna keep going. Let me just look at my conditions real quick. Just one moment. Okay, yeah, okay.
You got it?
Keep going, yep, sorry. I had a little more comment on that, but that's fine. Then we did hear from the, so then we did hear back from the Forest Service. There was a bit of a misunderstanding. Thank you. There was a bit of a misunderstanding over just the ability to improve the road. Pat Mercer has provided clarification that the applicant and he have spoken, and the applicant was able to provide better understanding and clarity on that. And the Forest Service has agreed that there is a unified understanding of what kind of road is in place and what kind of maintenance is done and what kind of access it provides. Next, we have a comment back from St. Vincent's Ambulance Service. Again, this was an email sent by Jeremiah Grantham directly to the applicant. And it just says that he states if you have 25 people or so, I think that all works fine. However, if you truly have 150 and something major happens, I think you're going to have a tough time managing all of that. Then we did receive a comment from Lake County Search and Rescue, where they do provide that they believe that they could provide support. And that it's not unlike, I think she summarized and said said another way, despite the concept of backcountry as being wide open space, egress is a commonly thorny issue for SAR operations and one we're used to working with. But she did also point out a lot of different concerns. One, in making sure that all of the people that attended any events would understand the inherent risks and what it is to be within the backcountry and what the access would mean. So she really encouraged making sure that anybody that would attend an event at this location would be educated about what to expect. And then just kind of some updates and information along the way. So again, the Forest Service, Pat Mercer, did provide clarification about what the classification of the road is, and that there couldn't be a reliance on it being enhanced for any kind of access for emergency response. I just wanted to point out the applicant may be able to obtain a renewal, but the temporary special use permit for the Packboro picnic activity, it expired in October of 2022. So it is no longer current unless there's been a new one and staff doesn't have that. BLM, so we were not sure if BLM had seen we hadn't gotten a response from the referral that we had sent out. So I did contact Keith Berger. Keith Berger called today and did indicate that they do feel that they need some further review. They don't know if that's going to result in more regulations or not, too soon to know, but they are very, would like to know before a decision is rendered, so that they know kind of where things are at and are able to provide some, maybe some input before the final decision. I did explain that the recommendation will be made today. It will be going to the board, but the board has the ability, I believe, to defer that decision for up to 30 days. The CDOT and the traffic study, Brian Killian did reach out. They did receive the traffic impact study from the applicant, but however, there are quite a few outstanding concerns and questions. One is the introduction of a shuttling plan. There was no shuttling plan. I think some time ago there had been maybe it was during the Jackass Jamboree application, I thought about shuttling from maybe the zip line operation to the site, but there's no formalized shuttling plan that's been submitted by the applicant, but it was introduced within the traffic study as a way for the larger events, what they refer to as a scenario C with 150 people, as a way to take 70% of the attendees by shuttle versus passenger car. But then there is a concern in talking to CDOT about how they will not allow them to load and unload in the access permit. So unsure how the shuttles would be able to navigate Forest Service Road 134 in or out to take guests in or out, or what that looks like, or how long it would take at the end of an event that ends at 11 o'clock. I'm not sure how long it would take to figure out how to have guests leave the site if 70% of them were using a shuttling service. So they have indicated that is going to be, they anticipate there's going to be several different revisions back and forth with the applicant's engineer about what the final outcome of the access permit is going to be. So I do think it's going to take a bit of time to get that information. Alcohol use on the premises, the applicant suggested that if this would be a BYOB event, and staff would suggest that in this location, it would be very difficult to support a BYOB type of event, and that it should be under a Colorado Department of Revenue off-premises license if there's going to be any alcohol on the event, and that it should be overseen by TIP certified servers, and that it should be expressly prohibited within any marketing for any type of large-scale events. Alcohol service should be discontinued discounted, that should be
Not
said,
discounted.
not discounted, but
We got that.
discontinued. Maybe it should be discounted, discontinued for a period of time prior to the end of the event. Again, consider it, in talking with CDOT as well about the impact that an event getting over at 11 o'clock. We all know what that commute is like coming into Lake County, and it's just a hard area to not try to suggest maybe some very responsible alcohol guidelines. Also talked to the sheriff, who also agreed and encouraged these kind of requirements. Volume of events impact access and evacuation. While the application contemplates nightly vacation rentals year-round, the special events that are being proposed are from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and this time frame is exactly when Lake County is experiencing the highest volume of scheduled events, and I emphasize scheduled special event permits because the numbers that I've used are for all of our historically standing events that we see every year. So I thought it would be good to create a situational awareness of what kind of level of event activity there is during those 97-day time frame. And so Lake County in 2021, we didn't have a 2022 schedule, so I went back to 2021, and I will say, I think 2022 was busier than 2021, but we had 50 days during that 97 period of time that we had scheduled events happening within the county. And that includes all of the race series events, which I believe this year are contracted with SAR for service during those timeframes. Conservatively estimated that Leadville event days in the summer are about 15. And then the proposal of the Climax Revival of 37 days within that 97-day period. Obviously, when you add them up, there's going to be a high likelihood of overlap, which speaks directly to a lot of the concerns that we've heard from both ambulance service, emergency management, and I'm not sure whether or not SAR thought of those overlaps in times that they may already be committed to. So the purpose in kind of looking at this was to kind of layer on all of the factors, the limited single access, participant physical ability that needs to be cognizant of, and the shuttle service to ensure an effectively safe how will that effectively create a safe evacuation? Those were put into the reason for suggesting a condition of limiting the amount of events per year, but with the ability to look at this on an annual basis that could maybe particularly increase or decrease the amount of use in the area depending on how it went. Requiring wilderness first aid trained staff, hiring SAR if available or another company to provide emergency medical support. And then like the applicant I believe already has, is a Flight for Life contractual support. And so that would just be for an incident support. Obviously, Flight for Life could not do any kind of evacuation other than to do for any kind of injury support. Considering even all of these conditions, there's still not a solid evacuation plan. The water supply and sanitation plan, the well permit that's been provided is not intended for commercial use. It is a domestic well, which for domestic uses can serve up to 3 households. But again, the division does not allow that for any type of commercial use. So if you rent your property, you have to go into the Division of Water Resources and address that. And there is a consumptive use qualification that might result in the need for a water supply plan. The method of sanitary waste, there's been several different things, including that they currently use a composting toilet, and I did look on their website, and it looks like how they direct their tenants is to release their gray water on the ground. That I don't imagine that's going to be able to be a method that would be able to be continued for any increase in use, as we learned with the Tennessee Pass cuts. So I do think a new pit privy sanitary waste method is going to have to be reviewed by the Board of Health to expand the degree of use in regards to sanitary waste. Portalets and porta potties. We don't have any information that there could be access available, that they'd be able to get trucks in. We do know that when they were pouring concrete on site, they weren't able to get those trucks in on site. We're not sure they can get a comfort truck in, or that you could transport portalets safely in and out of the site. Colorado Parks and Wildlife, that was spoke about in the last review. We do not have a letter from them indicating that they have reviewed this, and so we suggested a condition of review of approval. Guest operational and safety manual. This is called for both in the within the use standards for the use, as well as we asked for these on group camps. And it's what we were talking about, is what SAR mentioned. It's what we've heard from a lot of different emergency management that we've talked about in regards to this proposal, educating anybody that would attend an event there, so that they're fully understanding the risks involved. Prior, I do know in looking at the applicant's website that they do try to prepare renters for their cabin, the Carner cabin that they have currently, how to kind of tell them what to expect, but we'd like them to go further into a guest operation guide. The following is not an exhaustive list, but I would say this is just a list of different conditions that you can choose from, you can adjust, you can do as you see fit with them. So you could ratchet up or down if you see merit in limiting the amount of events on site. These are just some of, particularly the limitations on the number of events is a suggestion. So I'll just read those into the record, and I apologize that they're so long. So number 1 is an approved access permit from CDOT. Number 2 is a CDOT approved safety plan if event staff is ever guiding vehicles onto Highway 91. Number 3, there shall be no outside alcohol allowed at any event. This shall be communicated in all marketing and advertising. Any alcohol provided on site is subject to the state of Colorado off-premise liquor licensing requirements as administered by the Lake County Clerk and Recorder. If an off-premises liquor license is provided, all servers must be tips trained with a record of such available for review. All alcohol sales shall end strictly 1.5 hours before the end of an on-site event. Number 4, the operation shall be limited to host a total number of events for scenario B and scenario C as defined within the traffic impact study. A, scenario B, no more than 70 total participants. If all other conditions are met, the conditional permit allows up to 20 of this type of event to be held during 2023. And B, scenario C, no more than 150 total participants. If all other conditions are met, the conditional use permit allows up to 2 of this type of event to be held during 2023. Number 5, any shuttle plan must be approved by Community Planning and Development prior to operations. The plan must include the parking area along with any required permissions or approvals, a contract with the business providing the service, an overall operational plan, and any other information that the department may deem necessary. Number 6, the applicant shall create a guest operation and safety guide and provide a copy of the guide to CPD prior to operation. The guide must include a 24-hour available emergency contact. Number 7, prior to operations, the applicant must provide CPD with an approved sanitary waste management plan, which has been approved by the Board of Health as applicable. Number 8, the conditional use permit shall be reviewed on an annual basis administratively with the ability for the Director of CPD to elevate the review to the Board of County Commissioners. The applicant shall furnish an annual report by January 31st of each year, which includes but is not limited to a general standard operation report for the year in review, the total number and types of events for the year, total number of attendees for each event, record of all tip servers, proof of certifications, records of all staff emergency medical certifications, status of improvements, safety incident record, a report of any safety incidents to include but not limited to any controlled or uncontrolled fire incident, calls to 911 for service, including requests for assistance from fire, EMS, sheriff, and SAR, injuries treated on site, the description, the treatment given, the cause of the injury, and action taken to reduce future risk. The annual review may result in a recommendation from CPT to the Board of County Commissioners to include but not limited to increase or decrease degree of use, recommend additional review, or recommendation for consideration of revocation. If the annual report is not received by February 15th of every subsequent year, the permit holder will be considered in default and subject to enforcement. Number 9, prior to any building permits or improvements on site, the applicant must make application for site plan review. Number 10, through the site plan review process, the applicant shall have environmentally sensitive areas identified. Identified areas shall be protected by restricting public access, including but not limited to areas like wetlands located near the stage. Number 11, all structures are subject to the Lake County Building Code and permit requirements. Number 12, prior to operations, the applicant must provide CPT with an on-site fire protection plan approved by the Lake County Fire Rescue, which may be subject to annual review. Number 13, the operation shall remain compliant with all the use-specific standards 5.2.28. Number 14, any alcohol or substance recovery event shall be approved prior to the scheduling by CPT. At a minimum, the applicant shall contractually engage with a drug and alcohol recovery medical professional, along with approval in coordination with Lake County Public Health. Additional requirements may be applicable. Number 15, the temporary use permit issued by the Forest Service has expired. Permit must be renewed or reapplied for as applicable prior to any continued permitted activities. And 16, prior to operations, the applicant shall provide a letter from CPW confirming all impacts shall or will be properly mitigated to CPD. And number 17, all statements made by the applicant and the application by the applicant within the application and hearing shall be considered conditions of approval. Happy to answer any questions.
I think I might just dive right into applicant presentation.
Did you want me to go to your website?
Sure.
And just pulling up our website, climaxrevival.com, to give some further feel for what we're trying to do, our mission, vision, and purpose, which is really guided by the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. 7 goals that are in the plan are the things that drove us to, first of all, create the cabin. It was 15 years ago that I was in front of this board. 2 of you were on the board at that time and approved our rezoning from industrial mining to agricultural forestry, which allowed us to build a residence, and then the conditional use permit to allow us to build a cabin, a backcountry lodge. Since that time, 12 years, we've operated previously Anna's Cabin, now renamed Carter's Cabin, successfully to the point where it is fully subscribed. It is rented every day of the winter season through May 1st. And so we are at capacity and would like to create some more accommodations and create some summer business, which we were lacking. And that's what drives this application to create a special event venue. Without being too repetitive, and that was a great presentation of what we're asking for, but just to verify 4 additional structures that would not be more than 4 people each. So that's a total of 16, and another 6 campsites, 4 people at each of those campsites. That's 24. So it would be a total of 48 in the summer, 24 in the winter. It's very sustainable, given the backcountry location. It's 2 miles from the highway. And then our events, we've already
hosted several events, including avalanche education, adventure recovery, which is alcohol recovery, guide training, photo shoots, yoga retreat, under 25 people, which doesn't require an additional permit. But we'd like to open up to the market of hosting weddings, micro weddings. And that would be up to 150 people, especially in the case of a backcountry music festival. We previously applied about 2 years ago for an event called the Jackass Jamboree, which was a hike-in, camp-out music festival. We had 3 bands scheduled to play, but it was turned down by the commissioners. We asked for 200 people. And the main reason for that was because of the egress, emergency egress, and parking insufficiency. And so we're coming back with a revised and diminished request of 150 people. And we think we have the backup to support that in terms of parking. Attached to the plan are the parking maps, where we've got various spaces on my BLM lease, 20 spaces there. Along the BLM right-of-way, an additional 12 spaces. On Conrad Lindis's leased property, he's my neighbor who has leased me the northern part of his property for access. And there's an additional 6 spaces there, and then 15 spaces on my property. So I think that should add up to about 52 total spaces. We originally applied back in June, and we're going to have our first public hearing in November. It's been 3 times tabled because of the various opposition and concerns that have come up. And so we've done our best to revise the plan and meet with those people and come up with better plans to mitigate those concerns. And I think we've done a pretty exhaustive job, including most recently the traffic study. So we've hired an engineer, Carrie McDowell Schroeder out of Eagle. She's done the traffic study, and it is now in the hands of Brian Killian at CDOT. I spoke to him today, and I have a high degree of confidence that we're going to get an access permit. What he said to me was that if you get approved, we'll work with you on access. They do have some questions that need to be resolved regarding the shuttle plan. They want specifics on what kind of shuttles, where the parking area is going to be. For instance, Ann mentioned that we've had previous conversations with White Mountain to use their parking lot. We've also talked about utilizing Copper Mountain's Far East parking lot for guests that are coming southbound. But we don't have contracts in place at this point. So those are the things that we need to provide to them to give the final access. I would love to get approval on this plan and your support to go forward. I think it would be a great benefit to the community economically, and create a recreational asset that everybody can be proud of. It's sustainable. But and I hope that, all the things that we've done have demonstrated our willingness and eagerness to comply with, every concern that's out there to protect the resource. That's our greatest concern too, is sustainability. I just wanted to introduce to you the staff, which is myself and Leslie Altman sitting next to me. The 2 staff that we have now. We have hopes that we'll grow and have additional staff. She's the Chief Operating Officer and my partner in this business. You see her on the website here. We are both first aid and CPR and AED certified. So I'm also outdoor emergency care certified through CMC. And any staff that we hire on is gonna have that requirement as well. Also in attendance, I wanted to introduce Aaron Hillsworth from Climax Molybdenum Mine. He's the land and water manager who I've worked with extensively over trying to get additional emergency egress. And I'm hoping that we can talk a little further and answer your questions about why we're limited to Forest Service Road 134. And then finally, I just kind of wanted to address a couple of the concerns that I take a little bit of issue with or disagree with. Regarding the road and the maintenance of it, I did make a mistake in my first report saying that we would improve the road. I used the wrong word. It should be maintain the road. Forest Service and the BLM are both in agreement that I have the right to maintain the road. And there is a letter from the BLM that was submitted previously that states specifically what that entails, up to 30 foot in width, 15 foot on either side of the center line, and remove boulders and fill in ruts and grade the road so that we can get four-wheel drive emergency vehicles to the site, and as well as a drilling rig, which I do have well permits. 2 of them I've applied for. The domestic one that Ann mentioned is already in place, and I talked with Golden Eagle locally here, and they've been on site and have talked about what is needed to get the drilling rig up there to do that. A second well permit, a commercial permit, has been approved with condition of an augmentation plan. And so I'm in the process of getting that. It takes some time to go in front of the water court and have that augmentation plan to protect the downstream water rights, which include Climax, owns 1/3 of the water rights in Chalk Creek, and the other 2/3 are Pueblo Water Board and Aurora. And so that augmentation plan would involve me leasing some rights to make that active. So I wanted to let you know that that's in the works. The amount of events, Ann had in her report 37. I'm a little bit confused about where that number came from, because all of our events are in the summertime. Memorial Day to Labor Day, as we've said. There are 12 weekends in that span that are available. And so if you had an event every Saturday and every Sunday, that's 24 events, 24 total. So
It came from your traffic study.
The traffic study?
Your traffic study said that you wanted to do 2 times a week for the smaller events and 7 large events.
Okay, well, the 7 large events would be in that same time period.
She divided them up into 3 different categories. That's where
Right.
they came from.
Well, they would run concurrently. So there's not 37 available dates, is what my point is. So, sorry about the confusion on that. And that's, a maximum looking, the traffic study looks out to 2045, in terms of what this could be at a maximum build out at that point in time. The other place where we came up with the numbers that you see in there, a limit of 70 without a traffic mitigation company helping to direct, and then 150 to create the shuttle plan. Those are all figures that were calculated with formulas that are put out there by CDOT to what would trigger the need for additional turning lanes. And so we don't want to have to create an additional turning lane on Highway 91, which would be prohibitively expensive, until $300,000 to $1 million for that, which is not doable by us. So that's where we came up with those thresholds, so that we don't create more cars in a certain time frame to trigger that. So lots of reasons why we've come up with those numbers. I just wanted to also mention that the other, I'd like you to focus on the replies from Becky at the Lake County Search and Rescue, who I think did a very thoughtful analysis and basically said that, you know, they're capable of handling that, and there's lots of other instances in the county where they have that limitation. I thought Claire Skeen did a great job with the Office of Emergency Management, even though she did have some concerns. I thought that each one of those concerns were listed and were responding to. And then I see Steve Boyle is on the call, and I'd ask him to chime in because he's the only referral agency that actually came up to the property and inspected the cabin and surroundings, and as well as the road. So I just wanted to thank him for being on the call, and thank you, Aaron, for coming. And that's really all I have for my presentation, just available for whatever questions you have.
Thank you, David. Do we have any public comment? Anybody on Zoom and or in the room? Okay, we'll go through, and does anybody have any questions for the applicant and or staff? Let's start. Sarah? Start? You do. You said no.
Let's see. I guess I have a couple questions for clarification. One of them was about the water and the commercial well. I just wanted to be sure that it had been communicated, at least through staff, or understood, and it sounds like it has, that the Lake County Augmentation Plan boundary does not include that area in your property, so that is quite a process to go through, which it sounds like you have initiated. I wonder, is there an existing permit, and I'm sorry if I've forgotten, for the use of Forest Service 134 for the cabin already? And is that part of something that needs to be obtained from the Forest Service?
There is not an existing permit. I've met with Patrick Mercer, the Forest Service Ranger, and it's been, he has said that there's not one needed for our use.
Their special use permit is for the Packboro picnic. So that's what they have to use Forest Service for is that their temporary use permit is for the borough.
The Packboro picnics, yeah. Which is in process again now for 2023.
Okay, that goes against what I understand necessary with the Forest Service on use of roads, even in shorter sections of road, so I am curious about that. The Memorial Day to Labor Day is helpful to understand as far as that then winter capacity, I think you stated was gonna be 24?
24.
Okay, and that is in the cabin and all of the other structures
Yep.
intended on the site? Okay. If you do not obtain a commercial well, is there an alternative plan? And or like other path that needs to be taken? Does that change the application as far as meeting uses that exist in code?
Well, they
versus not?
would need to come up with, you know, if you are not successful in acquiring an augmentation plan, then you would have to come up with, I mean, possibly, they would have to come up with some kind of a water plan. I'm not sure what that would end up being, but they would have to do something if it's not successful. But yeah, water report generally takes about 2 years, and it's a pretty expensive process. So.
Currently with the cabin, guests haul in their own water. Or melt snow in the winter. So that's how water is obtained. And, yeah, we have a septic system in Leachfield engineered that's available, to use when water is available.
Attached to the cabin.
Attached to the cabin, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But in the winter, there's no water source. So that was, I mentioned the gray water is from the sink is just gathered in a bucket and
Sift,
sieved
back
and,
out.
yeah, and released.
I am wondering the first condition on approval from CDOT, but it sounds like CDOT says upon approval from the county, so I think there's a
Yeah.
bit of a conundrum there.
Well, and I feel, I didn't hear from him, I heard that he had more questions than answers at this point. I didn't hear a confidence that the access permit would be granted. There was still a lot of things to be known, so maybe the applicant had a different conversation, but that's not kind of, where we were at when we spoke. Also, to better understand, the sheltering plan is coming in place because of, as David indicated, they will require improvements to the highway at that higher degree of use. And so that's why we're looking for an alternative way to get guests to the site.
Yeah, I kind of lost track of you on the what threshold and volume you were trying to stay under so as not to trigger some turning lane, and is that what you're?
So 70 is,
70 people?
70 people.
Okay, and you have 52 parking spots?
Correct.
Okay.
Unless we hear something different from BLM, they did call today, but their agreement that they've submitted has 20 plus 12 in the right away.
Okay. So does the 150 number, should that just be 70 per event? The 150 max that you're proposing?
So anything over 70 went into a different tier and they did another tier. They ended at 70 for their analysis and then they went up to 150. So they did 3 different scenarios.
CDOT did?
Hit their traffic engineer.
Yeah, traffic engineer.
So they did the 48, as he talked about with the semi-permanent structures and the camping and Carter's cabin. So that was the first scenario that they did. Then they did a 70 and then they did 150. So at 150, that was the threshold at which they would have to do road improvements. So, but they did it in those 3 different increments.
Okay.
Can I say that again, just so that I understand it?
Yeah, me
So
too.
48 people is how many people could actually spend the night on the property with the 5 units and the additional 10
In the
camp
summer.
in summertime only.
In winter, they're proposing 24 in the winter.
70 is the maximum number of people that could be there at an event with the available 52 parking spaces, assuming that we have no more than 52 vehicles coming on. Anything over 70 then would require a shuttle service. So not 150 people, but 71 people would require a shuttle service.
Right.
Is that,
That's
am I
right.
understanding that correctly?
Yep.
Okay. So 71 up to 150 would absolutely require a secondary transportation
Correct.
arrangement. Okay.
And then back to the road, I know that there was some, and I just wanted you to clarify if you could please, on the maintenance versus improvements. If will you just elaborate a little bit on that? So, because I feel like when you were just describing it, perhaps it was that you were allowed to still do some improvements with certain idea, is that what you were indicating? Up to a certain like amount?
Yeah, well, keep in mind, there's two different jurisdictions here.
Mhm.
The BLM goes up about a half a mile. And the BLM is giving you permission to maintain that road, including removal of boulders, filling of ruts, grading, and that work is planned for this spring.
Okay.
The Forest Service, that portion of the road goes from 0.5 to, well, all the way to the top of Chalk Mountain, including the driveway to my property. They're not interested in having me do any of the work, but there is really no work to be done because it's in fairly good condition. Once you get above the first pitch, about mile 0.5, then the grade mellows out quite a bit. There's not hazards. In fact, the Golden Eagle drilling rig people don't have any problem with getting the rig up there. It's just the first part, so. Yeah, so I'm going to be initiating this spring what I've been committed to do from the BLM on that first half mile section, that steepest, most dangerous part.
That's the part that you said you had permission to not only maintain, but to grade.
The grade, yeah,
So that's only the half mile.
that's only the first
I
half
was
mile.
confused on that too.
Mhm.
There's a letter, I think, in the packet too from BLM that outlines exactly what they're allowing.
I think I've driven that road before, but I've never paid any attention to that land that you're referencing. How far in do you have to go to get to the parking for the event venue?
Only about 100 yards.
So all
So
of
I
that,
have-
all of your parking really is done in
Not all
that
of
first
parking.
half mile?
No, 20, the first 20 spaces.
Okay,
So about 100 yards up from the CDOT right-of-way,
yeah,
normal
the
parking
big pull
area where
Yeah.
most people park.
Okay,
I have a 50 by 80 rectangle
mhm,
that would hold 20 cars. And that is also where the shuttles would, let people off or pick people up.
so the shuttles would have to go 100 yards up into the property to be able to let people off and turn around?
Right.
Of 134.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
and that's not a bad section right there. That's very easy. I mean, we've had
yeah.
an Airstream get up there.
Yeah.
Very low.
And then how much farther in do you go to get to the other parking areas?
So probably another 100 yards to the first bench, which is actually the old Denver and Rio Grande Railroad right-of-way. And it's also where the public service gas line comes through.
Mhm.
And there's another 12 spots there,
Mhm.
6 on each side of the road that's, wouldn't interfere with egress. And there's also an emergency vehicle staging area that we delineated there. And this has all been shared and approved by BLM.
Okay.
And so in addition to my lease of the 50 by 80, I have the entire right-of-way, which allows me to maintain all the way up to about a half a mile up to where Forest Service begins.
Gotcha.
The Conrad's property, where there's another 6 spots, is about 1 mile up.
Okay.
And then my driveway is 1.8 miles up.
And is some of the parking at your driveway?
Some of the parking would be on my property, beyond the driveway,
Okay, so it's 2 miles in.
2 miles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. And the parking on adjacent to the road, is that outside of the 30 feet?
No, it's within the 30 feet, but it's outside of the area. Cars would go.
So the road is only 30 feet wide and you'd have cars parked on both sides?
Yes.
And Conrad's how far away?
1 mile.
1 mile from yours.
Yeah.
And that's
Or
only
no,
6
no,
feet.
it's
From the
1
base.
mile up from the base.
Okay, he's right next to you.
His property touches mine.
And his is still mining, isn't it? Rather than-
No, it's
Did he
agricultural.
go,
forestry.
he went way up?
He went A up with me, yeah.
Okay,
So
I
that we
kind of
were-
remember that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Well, now that you got the fellow from Climax, Aaron, what about an emergency exit? Is that, you looked at all of that?
So we did, Howard, can I answer that real quick, Aaron, before you do that? So the applicant did ask us if we talked to Matt Main at Climax. I brought that to the commissioners, and to Claire and to Tim, and the county had decided not to pursue asking, Climax to be able to do, an emergency, egress through Climax. That is the county would have to take on the liability of that access. As far, Claire would be in charge of that, as well as the county would be in charge of the ability to use, I think, what is it, 11B? And so that was vetted with the county, and the commissioners decided that they did not want to ask Climax to do that.
So the one road is the only access, and that's the only foreseeable access. Okay,
By vehicle.
correct.
And so the idea for special events and summer access is either parking, most of the parking, it looks like down below, and or shuttle service, and then it's hiking up into the property.
Yeah.
Some additional shuttles that could, that are four-wheel drive capable. And also for, emergency, to evacuate, say, injured or sick guests that are staged at my property.
Okay,
That's why we have 15 spots there.
The shuttle bus for additional capacity drop off quite a bit low. I mean, you're looking at 2/3 of a mile to get up to the event venue from where the shuttle drops off. So you would have to have additional shuttles,
least.
four-wheel drives, whatever. A lot of people wouldn't be able to make that hike necessarily.
Correct.
because if the,
The original intention, just so you know, of use the example of the Jackass Jamboree, was to have it overnight, so people will not be exiting in the evening. It's kind of like on the concept of like Winter Wondercrafts, that's a camp and stay event, and they only let people exit for the most part, if it's an emergency, until the next morning.
Sure.
So that's kind of the concept of that, it's a hike to camp out event. You stay, you listen to the music, and you do not exit till the next morning.
Right.
So that's kind of the impetus behind that event. With the wedding, yes, that could be slightly different, but we think the way we want to market it is for micro weddings where they want to camp and stay, utilize the cabin, and hopefully the other cabins. And the majority of the guests that come would stay on property. So we don't have that egress issue, at night with alcohol being involved or whatever it is.
Sure.
We would love to have alcohol free, but we know a wedding might not like that idea. So we're willing to do what we need to do for the county to meet the requirements for the alcohol things, is we don't drink. So it's a different thing for us. But, we keep talking about this exiting at 11 o'clock at night and that sort of thing and onto the highway, totally get that. But, the way we want to market the events and the weddings is that you come and stay. That you get to experience the grandeur of the backcountry at night. The reason that we all love it is spectacular quiet at night. So.
I would just suggest it's a little different application. We don't have an application that said that, and we haven't contemplated what 150 people staying at night would mean. So I would say the application.
yeah, I was gonna say, because what we're looking at here is people staying, 48 people staying, and whether or not it's suitable for that. And so 150 people and where they're gonna stay and park and camp and drink and go to the restroom at are.
Yeah, we have, looked at several companies with porta potty, and there was a company that said they had no problem getting up the road. can't remember which one, we talked to so many of them, which one it was. But they were not fearful of getting up and down the road to pump, you know. And, you know, per se, if we only have 1 or 2 of those events a year, that's just one, you know, it's one event to pump it out before you bring those to back down the hill. Because that's the only, you know, if we build an additional pit for the year or whatever, for the smaller events that we're doing, you know, our average events that we're doing, like we're looking at a mushroom foraging event, you know, this year it's like 12, 15 people. You know, a backcountry cooking event, it's gonna be about the same. I mean, the majority of our events are really gonna sit probably under 25, unless we have this micro wedding event where we get to do a concert event or some sort of concert or camp event. So majority of these events are what we think would not be stressful on OEM, but it's like, how many weddings should we, you know, schedule? And can we work with the schedule with the county to not schedule them? We're happy to not schedule them, you know, block the calendar on the Leadville race days and those sorts of things, and not make the property available on those high-end weekends for sure. You know, and maybe we only have 2 weddings a summer if they're large, but if they're really micro lenders, like let's say 50 or under, that's much more suitable to the property. It's much more what we're looking for. But, you know, we didn't want to discount something because at some point be helpful to our economic base for all the studies and the water mitigation we have to do. We might need a little extra.
And do you mind, what review are we waiting for on BLM? Because I guess I'm confused just on the maintenance that's already been approved, but then what is the review that can happen that's still pending?
Keith Berger called and said, you know, and I guess I would just be providing my impression a little bit. I can say exactly what he said, but also the impression is that they wanted to look at this just a little bit. They wanted to look at the application that had been submitted to the county in a little greater detail before, which, you know, he said that may end up in more review and more regulations, but it was too soon to know that. And he was just concerned that a decision would be made today because they wanted to have a little time to look a little deeper at the application before they made any commitments moving forward. So it seemed as though that, you know, through the vetting of the application, perhaps there were just maybe a couple of boxes that they still wanted to check. I told him again, you know, that we generally act on files within a week after, but if we had reason to know that they would like to provide us some input before the decision was made, then we could bring that back.
Because but they're reviewing access. There's no other.
Parking and the access, so the right of way plus the ability, to continue the parking and right of way agreement.
Okay. And then maybe a point of clarification from the applicant, but is there a septic plan that's pretty laid out, like, because you have like tiers of use, it seems. So is it pretty clear on what's happening to accommodate 48 guests, 70 guests, 50 guests? Do you have that level of detail already mapped out?
Yes. So the 48 is for additional accommodations, up to 4 other structures. And those would be basically dry with composting toilets similar to the cabin. If there were, you know, if we get approval for the events, absolutely we will have an engineered septic and leach field like we do at the cabin already, but with the addition of having the well drilled so that there's a water supply to make it work. So we will have that in place as well. If there's a music festival, say with 150 people, we would probably need to bring in additional porta potties. It would be, brought in and then removed after the event.
I would just offer under the new regulation 43, I don't believe that you can have an engineered septic system without flushable toilets. So you would need to have a significant water supply to be able to serve an engineered septic system.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know that I have any questions.
I guess if I could just, I think I'm maybe a little confused on the actual intent of the capacity and the number of people that you do want to have, because I hear that not going beyond that 70-person threshold to trigger that CDOT highway improvement, but then so is 70 really the max for the events that you want to host?
70 is the threshold in which you would need a shuttle system in place. And 150 is the threshold of needing additional improvements to the highway.
So I think their permit is still asking for 150, what the application is still asking for 150. It's just that the parking is for 70 or under. If they have events that have more than 70, they'll have to do a shuttle plan.
And the shuttle plan does not trigger any of the improvements.
Well, so they're proposing that through the engineering. The shuttle plan hasn't been approved by CDOT at all.
Okay.
It's being proposed by their engineer of a way to mitigate having to do highway improvements. But CDOT hasn't approved that.
But there's nothing CDOT would require up to 7. There's nothing
Not-
additional CDOT.
Not
would require.
necessarily. They haven't granted, there may be more. They also have more questions beyond just the shuttle. They also have that they want to make sure the ratios are right about how many trips are being generated from the north and how many from the south. They want to, that's just one aspect of the review.
There is no final answer to that.
There's no final answer, and the shuttle is, I just brought that up as one that we also have like an overlap, but Brian brought up other concerns as well.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say that we can say that 70 is good to go with them. I'm just saying that definitely it's new information that we've never had before of considering a shuttling to mitigate the need for highway improvements. So that's the reason that one's been brought forward.
Help me with this, Ann. If you have all these people on the shuttle, we gotta go to their cars. And where's their cars?
Yeah,
I
I don't
mean,
know.
is the shuttle gonna go down Highway 24 somewhere else? It could, but what if they're just shuttling them from the parking lot? Then you put the people back in the parking lot anyway, and there's 150 cars gonna take off from the highway.
Well, they're only gonna be able to, of their 150, so think of it like that, of 150 people, like 105 will have to be shuttled in. And so 105 will be shuttled in, but then some people can still park there. So the people that got shuttled in have to still get back to the parking lot, to where, like if it's a Copper, they use the example of Copper, or John Hergert's property at the zip line, or Copper
If they're
Mountain.
shuttling to those areas.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
That's
they
the
still
idea.
have to have, are those permitted areas? Do they need permits for those areas? We just don't have any of that information, and I don't think the applicant has had an opportunity to do that either, because, probably they won't go into that until they know if CDOT would allow that. And Brian had just said, so, the idea of them coming into the leased area, so you're trying to park cars there, but then that becomes a loading and unloading place
Yeah.
as well. So I think that maybe is the point that you're making, is that,
That's the point.
yeah, you've already got all those cars you're kind of doing double duty now with that area, because it's supposed to be your parking area, but now it's your loading and offloading area. Because CDOT immediately says you can't onload and offload in their access permit area. So you've got to take them somewhere, and then that might be competing with your parking, absolutely. I mean, that, I would perceive that as having to figure out that. And how do you get everybody in and out? With, you know, with the evacuation concerns, and then if you have an evacuation, how do you do that?
I think making the approval on the condition of having CDOT approved access parking permit and plan in place is something that, you know, we would definitely support, in that with everybody. Answer those questions, whatever it comes out to be. I have a high level of confidence that they're gonna work with us based on my conversations with Brian. I understand you have some questions about what ifs, and is it really gonna be 70 or will it be a different number ultimately? I'm willing to, you know, adhere to whatever number CDOT comes up with.
I guess I wish with another application on the way for that area as well, that we had the conversation with CDOT on all of the permitted.
That's why, that's what triggered the
Yeah.
traffic study that they wanted on Conrad Lindis. That's, you know, that this application is really what triggered them wanting the traffic study on that application.
See that, wanting it. Okay.
So they're being cognizant of this one in relationship to that ask.
And keep in mind that Conrad's request is strictly winter use. It has, you know, chalk walls for ice climbing and leases it to Colorado Adventure Guides or Apex Mountaineering or CMC for that use. So that's not going to compound or add to, you know, the use of that access for our summer home events.
Okay. That's helpful, yeah, context. Gosh, I'm so sorry, I have water, but like the existing, I know it's hard to
So we don't have a cistern system in Lake County. We don't have anything approved by public health for potable water purposes. So them bringing in water and for a minimal use, I will also mention that I think potentially some of the uses that are happening are beyond the existing conditional use permit that's in place. But, so moving forward, some of the things that might have been allowed in the previous conditional use permit, we have new regulations. We have new septic regulations. If you're gonna expand the use that much, you've gotta have potable water. You're not gonna be probably able to release gray water onto the ground with that increased degree of use. There's gonna be, I don't think there can be any assumption that the way that Coroner's Cabin is operating right now is going to work the same way when you go to start permitting these other structures, because we just look at things differently. And we don't have a cistern monitoring system, especially for commercial use. And it really is kind of hitting that commercial use for the cistern than we would for like a backcountry structure, right, for a single person. But when you look at a commercial use, we don't have a public health policy. You know, Jackie talked a long time about doing one when she was here about cisterns. We just have standards or guidelines from the state, and the public health allows every jurisdiction to kind of do their own, just like Regulation 43. So getting water in for domestic use, you know, will need to work if an augmentation plan can't be arrived. So it can't just be an automatic, like, definitely you could just bring water in. That'll need to be vetted a little bit more.
And that does bring me to that question of, so it shows on here where the well is currently and the existing septic.
Neither of those are actually in.
There is an existing septic, and I think it shows the proposed well.
Oh,
There hasn't
okay.
been any wells.
Oh, okay, gets permitted, that's just where it's gonna go. You know, the proposed A-frame is really far away from that. The concert's pretty far away from that. The existing cabin is pretty far away from that. So I guess I'm just wondering, how will these units all be fed by that well?
The well is located at the deck site.
Mhm.
That's where the commercial activities would be. Venues, and so forth. The other structures aren't proposed to have water access. They would be like the cabin, basically dry, with composting toilet for sanitation facilities.
But no water.
No, dry.
And then the concert is pretty far, the concert stage area is pretty far away from.
Yeah, the concert stage, we created that. It'd be a great spot for it, but we are now thinking that the concerts would occur at the deck. And that the concert stage is actually, this was done back in June, sorry. And that's the helicopter landing pad.
Okay. Go ahead, yeah.
No, I don't, I mean, I think all of that, like, hauling in water for the hut and that is, that happens. That's something that, you know, primitive dispersed camping happens in the county, but I feel like this is a different application if you aren't able to get that water source, then there's like a whole nother plan that needs to be potentially for hosting that many people, which I don't necessarily think is insurmountable. It's just not necessarily
It's a different,
plan.
you know, it's a different conversation between a, like, existing use and this increased degree of use. It's just a different conversation. There's different needs, so trying to contemplate the whole host of degree of use has a lot of different attributes to it. And I think that's when it gets confusing, is because if we were just talking about one of these singular uses, it just gets complicated when you kind of layer all of it together.
I mean, US Forest Service, when they didn't have their water running, had it was not permitted by the county, but had alternative methods of providing water for campers. I don't know. I mean, it's possible, I just don't know that we're.
And I don't think that you know, the condition would say that they'll have to come up with that. You know, if the use is approved, then before they would pull permits for the structures, then they would provide us either a water plan, and then their variance. You know, all of the sanitation is going to require variance. So. Or a good portion of it. So when they want to go to build a structure, it will take it kind of on a case-by-case basis. What does this structure mean? What is this structure? So I don't think there's any way tonight, you know, to kind of really solve what their overall water plan is going to be for all these different uses. I think that we have to take it kind of use-specific and as they pull building permits.
Makes sense.
I mean, the water was one thing. I think the singular access, ingress and egress is my biggest concern with events that large.
You're talking about the one route?
Yeah, I mean, you have a fire right here.
Yeah.
Can't helicopter out 150 people. And I guess they just all have to hang out in the woods until they get rescued unless the forest fire spreads. I don't know, it just seems one access point and with it. I go back to what our intent with backcountry zoning was, and although I think we identified some areas that have If I want to go to a concert here, for sure, I think it'd be awesome and it'd look great. And it'd be amazing. But do I think it's necessarily responsible for this type of application? I would need convincing of that because of that singular access, the difficulty getting in and out of there for that many people, and really just that many people up there seems like a lot to me. If we were talking about expanding, you know, some of these little cabins and yurts and having a kind of setup up there, and you do these cool camps and retreats or whatever that utilize those cabins, and that's the extent of it, you know, I could get on board with that faster than it as it's proposed with that only one way in, only one way out, and not an easy. And then the water just adds to that to me because, you know, if you have three or four kind of dry cabins, I don't know if our code allows, if our public health code allows for those to be dry cabins or not, but depending on out-of-town people to know how much water to bring and do all those things when you're talking about multiple of these just feels like a lot to manage. I think it's possible because the huts do it and people do just fine with them, and I'm sure they've done great with that on the current cabin there. Yeah, I don't know, I think I get stuck on the large events.
The question for us is, if 150 is too large, what would be the right amount? You know, what would be the permissible amount that would make it accessible and make it easier for and sustainable, accessible for egress?
Variables are hammered out. 70 is a much more comfortable number for me with the single access. And mine just comes down to a lot of your parking is on either side of the roadway. That gives about a 14-foot, everybody parks all the way out.
Right.
No alcohol involved. You got 14 feet to be able to get up and down that mountain. And then you add panic to that. So that makes me question a larger number than that.
Abby, did you have something? I'm sorry.
Are we still in like question and answer, or where are we on the?
We're still in question and answer. I think there's some thoughts being discussed too as part of that, but.
Okay. No, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I can get much more clarity. Kind of, I know there's a lot of outstanding details. So I don't have any questions. I guess yeah, I don't know if now is Sarah's in the room. I don't know if we're not supposed to, right?
No,
like
I think we're just not able to make our motion. So I think discussion can still be occurring.
Okay. Yeah, I love it up there. It's absolutely beautiful. That road is tough. And like, I think I don't see how you could get 150, 70. And I totally, I know the owners know it way better than I do. So I don't mean to act like an expert, but just being recreationally, like exploring, camping up there, that road is tough. And so to compound it with this many people that frequently would really change the character of that entire area, on top of it being potentially unsafe, in my opinion.
Cars that you have suggested are only on the property, would remain on the property?
Except for the
That
power
part,
picnics were permitted to be on the 134 all the way to the top. Yeah.
Hear your concerns, and if I could just chime in with maybe a suggestion is that we kind of, just like we're staging the building to grow, that we maybe stage this ask of a special event venue to, be incremental in its growth. There seems to be a lot of skepticism that we can, safely and sanitarily accommodate 150 people. We really want to build the accommodations, and so I'm just thinking, I haven't consulted yet, but what if we were to, limit the special events to match the accommodations at 48 people, at least initially. And then, as we grow and get our commercial well, get our infrastructure built, have some time to, show the amount of traffic and parking and assets that we have, staff that we have to support it, and come back in another year or two to then increase that number accordingly. Whether that's 70 or 100 or 150.
Yeah, we're being in place by the
Yeah.
criteria.
I mean, you've got already an annual review as one of the proposed conditions, and we're fine with that. So I guess, would it be appropriate to suggest an amendment to, the maximum number to be 48, and thereby approve the accommodations, and there's more than ample parking, as it is.
Yeah, so we can, we'll definitely add that to now it's known that the applicant's open to that condition being put on. For sure. Yes, thank you.
With that suggestion, would you want to table this to our next meeting so that we can make sure that that's
Are you in
something?
agreement?
Yeah.
Okay, we're
Yeah.
fine. No, it's not tabled.
I'm in agreement.
But that means all the, like, sheltered camping, semi-permanent camping, until water is in place.
Yeah.
Well,
you
so
still
right
have to do-
now, we're just talking about, I think, just to clarify, they're just saying that they would limit their special events to event number to 48 people. That's the extent of the amendment that they're making. I think it would be up to us to make sure that a condition, which I was just looking for, is in here that says that all lodging is meeting the county public health code for water and sanitary, right? And is that already?
And each of these, as they come up, has to go through the planning and
Does
permitting
that make sense?
process,
Is
is
that
that
what you're
right?
getting at?
Yeah, they also have to do a site
Yeah, but I
plan
don't
review.
know that there's
Right.
any, like, there's nothing but the
So
cabin.
it's an
that is,
incremental
like-
add anyway.
Right,
And each one will meet code as we go
But
forward.
we still
That's
have,
right,
Right.
and we do have conditions.
public health
about
still has their
their
requirements.
water
right?
and their sanitation to be
Right.
there.
They'll have to get water and sanitation approved for even non-permanent,
Yeah, that's still
which
a
is
part
what
of it.
I'm making sure the
Well,
condition says.
If we agreed at 48 people, would we have to table that? Would that have to go back and go through all those different?
No, so I think the applicant has let you know, so if you want to take that into consideration when you make your motion.
And
then
looking
you-
through our
You would know
conditions.
that they would be open to something, so instead of maybe like number 4,
Sure.
modifying something to like condition number 4, because it is in here that they must have a approved water plan and a approved water sanitation plan. So you could just modify 4 to say, for this year, so there won't be any events over 48 people for And then decide when you want to do your first review.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know, number 7.
Yeah, there should be one from water and sanitation.
Sanitation is
Number
7.
7 is sanitation, but I don't see the water.
That's all right. Such a guy.
I'm pretty sure that.
This is all structures are subject to located building code.
Well,
Yeah, just this one.
it does not. So it could certainly be added to. It could just be a part of operations that must provide CBD with an approved sanitary waste management plan, which has been approved by the Board of Health, it's applicable, and a water supply plan as approved by the Division of Water Resources.
Just adding it then to number 7.
Yeah, water supply plan.
So that would just take care of the commercial well,
Right.
but that doesn't,
The commercial well isn't necessary if they can bring in alternative water, or if people are meant to haul in their own water.
So you could do a water supply plan approved by either Public Health or Division of Water Resources. Yeah, because Public Health would have to approve a cistern for commercial, it just depends on what degree of use. A cistern for a backcountry 10,000 is completely different than cistern use for 70 people, but maybe that diminishes it, that is different.
Any other questions and or thoughts before we talk about closing the public hearing on this one? Abby, Jeff, anything?
No, I'm good.
No, I'm good too.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing on file 22-41.
I'd move that we close the hearing on file 22-41.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. Enjoy your evening.
What's left of this?
Thanks, Sarah.
Take a 5-minute break.
Yes, I could use those. So we are gonna take a 5-minute break, and then we are gonna come back and do the motions for 22-35 and 22-36. And then we'll be back to this one at 22-41. So take a few minutes. 5 minutes. Back at 7:05.
I got a question before you take off. Well, when we take half a minute.
Half a minute.
Lines of Climax, all those years. When did you come to my managerial job?
She has to.
Oh, waterfall. It's mountain of ice. And we can see how they do that. I would like to talk to Aaron. It runs up against the same problems that I used to run without expectation.
Yeah, I think so. I think because it's not, it doesn't have to do with this application.
No, I mean, yeah, but this is kind of.
Oh.
Yeah. That's what.
Well, you can have a conversation and if you feel like it starts.
I'm not gonna talk anything about basics of the education. Yeah, oh, really? I never see him again.
Unfortunately, it was
Don't say
running
that.
since 96, 94.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to present to those, some kind of board commissioners. Those from 14 and had been running without the necessary permits and stuff like that. Take that off. Yeah,
I've
no.
got a question for Aaron when you stop.
Just say no, because all the PFAS regulations and impacting Iowa's health, just had to shut it down.
Yeah.
You don't be spreading that stuff.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I don't, I've got to be careful, I don't get into ex parte on the next question we're having on the water ice climate. Okay, you're in charge of water, you can answer this question. I was up there 30 years as a mill manager, and one of my big problems was whenever we were putting too much water down into Summit County, we run it over.
Oh,
Do you
right,
guys
right.
still do that?
Over by the Eagle Park Reservoir, or
Yeah.
just the number 4 tailings?
Yeah.
See, that little diversion there, doesn't run very much anymore. We do still get some little bit of water there, but not enough to really make any sort of
Well, you
falls.
probably don't have to because you got this, the water treatment plant down there, down we didn't have that.
Yeah.
No, I had to watch that, I had, oh, but too much going to Summit County, don't read it.
Nah, yeah, yeah, most of our diversions are either into the system or down Summit County. We just we haven't had to do so much towards the Eagle County side.
Well, in my last week at the assay lab, I've been here for 6 months in the lab, and on Monday I start haul truck training. Yeah.
Man, many
Well,
ways.
Climax is a good place.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot
Assay lab to
different
haul
than
truck,
when I
that's kind of
Yeah.
backwards, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a little different. I'm trying to get the full breadth.
You go do that,
We
for
got
sure.
21.
We'll get 2, get the
Oh, you get the regrind.
you get the regrind, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody likes looking at the new mill, because it's electromagnetically driven. You don't have gearboxes or anything like that, it's
Yeah,
just
I know.
magnets on and you start spinning.
We had 21 ball mills, and then we had 6 regrind mills.
Yeah.
And I salvaged one of the old regrind mills that's down there on the bike trail.
Yeah, oh, right, yeah, down there by the Dutch Henry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that's where that came from.
And I wanted to get float cell.
Yeah,
But I got there just too late. I mean, the guy had the float cell in the bucket,
yeah.
crunching it out.
Oh, jeez.
And really been nice to have a small machine.
Yeah. No, that would've been pretty neat with all the paddles and
Yeah.
everything on there. We don't even use paddle anymore.
I know, it's, and,
Unless you're at Henderson, then they still have all the old float cells there.
and the operator, yeah, they do, and the operators are like the old operators. I mean, the old operators.
Of course, I picked today, but not bring a water bottle or anything.
So much syntax, so much line, so they do.
Okay.
Well,
Anyway, nice talking to
We're
you
getting
about all
closer.
that.
yeah, well, it's funny talking to some of the operators that had been around, for 30 years. It's like, yeah, they would question the computer readings and they would, yeah, do the same thing. Say, it smells a little bit, so we need to add more of this, a little bit less of that. And, the next guy would come in on shift and be like, what's going on? Go back.
When I left there, we were just getting into computer operation for the reagents. We were experimenting.
Yeah. Now they've got AI working on some of this stuff and like just tweaking things. It's impressive.
Nice talking with you.
It's like, that's right.
It's a different falls anyway.
Oh, there you go.
There's 2 of them up there. Yeah, I tried, I went climbing them one time, it's struggling, I was a lot younger then. We got about 2/3 of the way up, and came flying down, that thing. And you couldn't hardly get hurt, though. I mean, it was-
Good.
Well, yeah. Looked like a muffin man, with had all these suits. Pretty soft. I suppose if you hit your face,
I can hear it.
that would
We're all the way down there. Oh, and then remembered my first
throw you in
picture.
some phone.
I had one phone call from just a second.
Yeah. And no supper tonight, it looks like.
I know.
Guess
I just want to have a drink.
Yes, for
Still up there.
Too late for that, too.
When I was working for the mine down here, it's one of well, no, down in Arizona, so South Tucson, they had, some environmental department, they had, we identified a person who was working in the city lab that we wanted.
Really?
But yeah, that's what they said.
Sorry, guys, Ann had to make a quick phone call, so we'll be just a couple more minutes.
Spots until we.
They could police him.
She dropped the phone on the way out.
Yeah.
Oh, it isn't like one of worse now.
Maybe not.
Come back with COVID. I couldn't hire anybody for 2 years.
I remember going, we changed, so we changed the zoning on it.
Yeah, but I don't think I went with that, because I've not been up there.
Are you sure you didn't go up there?
Yeah, I went to the one we were talking about, the guy doing the mine.
Oh, okay, you know, I was assessor, I went up there to look at the other things too. That's right,
That might be
yeah.
what it was.
But it's a long ways up. It's a neat area though. Real neat area.
Okay.
We can do an assessor. Yeah, you gotta.
You need an assessor.
Yeah, there's the.
Okay, I think we are ready to dive back into it.
Yeah.
So back to file 22-35 and 22-36, we have a CUP motion and a site plan review motion to be made. Does anybody have any motion, or would anybody like to make a motion? Let's start with 22-35, which is the CUP application. Anybody want to make that motion?
I'm getting back there.
I'm trying to think, I'm thinking it over here myself.
And
There
I've
was
got it
a-
here if anybody wants it too. Handwritten.
There was a change you made to that, wasn't there? 22-35,
35.
a wording change,
Fine.
and it was a really slight one. I think that makes it.
Maze to shalls,
I'm sorry?
shalls to maze, right? Those are
Oh,
the
yeah,
changes.
Those were on the site plan review though.
Yeah, those are in the
That's
site plan,
36.
and
Yeah.
36, I didn't suggest any edits. So here's 36, if anybody wants the motion, this one, this motion.
That's
So
36.
35 is the CUP, right? And that's what we're doing.
This is the CUP.
Yep.
Sorry, 35.
Are we in
Yeah.
agreement on this?
You can make a motion and then you guys can discuss it.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
All right, I will make a motion. I move that the planning commission recommend conditional approval of the Board of County Commissioners of file number 22-35. Conditional use permit application for a multifamily development at 1719 Poplar Street, Leadville, Colorado. The conditions for approval are: number one, the conditional use permit is conditional upon an approved or conditionally approved site plan review. Number two, the developer shall work with the Leadville Lake County Regional Housing Authority to determine a way to maintain and ensure that the housing units remain as stated in the application, affordable workforce housing units. Number three, short-term rental use is prohibited. Number four, agreement shall be approved and signed by the applicant and the Board of County Commissioners and recorded prior to the issuance of a building permit. Five, all statements made by the applicant in the application and the hearing should be considered conditions of approval. And further finding, different there. Number 2, that as conditioned, the proposed conditional use is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies contained in the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. Also number 2.
Sorry.
The first one was number 1, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll do it that way. Number 2, that the conditioned and proposed conditional use does conform to the requirements and provisions of this code. Number 3, that the conditioned adequate public safety, transportation, and utility facilities will be available to serve the subject property while maintaining sufficient levels of service for existing development. That as conditioned, the proposed conditional use is likely not to be detrimental to public health, safety, or the welfare of county residents, or to cause hardship for neighboring persons. Number 5, that is conditioned, the proposed conditional use is consistent with and in harmony with the neighboring land uses and future intended land uses in the area. 6, that is conditioned, the proposed conditional use will not result in overly intensive use of the land or relative to the surrounding land. Number 7, that as conditioned, the proposed conditional use will not result in traffic congestion or hazards to vehicular or pedestrian traffic. Number 8, that as conditioned, the proposed conditional use the proposed conditional use will not unnecessarily scar the land with which such use would be located. And number 9, that as conditioned, the proposed site of the conditional use is not and will be free from natural or man-made hazards, or that such hazards can and will be adequately mitigated.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
Okay, I'll do roll call. Howard Trips,
Aye.
Joey Edwards,
Aye.
Abby Dahlman,
Aye.
Heather Lind, aye. Okay, we have a file 22-36 for the site plan review. Do we have a motion on this one? This one did have some.
Yeah, those have a couple changes, my copy has them if you want them. 3 and 4. So
3 is May.
4 is,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, and delete.
Delete number 11. I'm doing this on number 11.
Let me read it this way.
Yep, just do it. No, not at all.
All right. Yeah. I move that the Planning Commission recommend conditional approval of the board to the Board of County Commissioners for file number 22-36, a site plan review proposed by COH Investments LLC at 1719 Poplar Street, pursuant to the standards of Section 3.15 Site Plan Review. Further finding that the approval criteria pursuant to Lake County Land Development Code, Section 3.15.3F, can be met as evidenced in those staff reports dated November 28, 2022, and March 27, 2023. File number 22-36 and conditioned as follows. Number 1, I can't remember that act.
CDC.
Lake
County Land, thank you. Lake County Land Development Code, thank you.
Mhm.
Chapter 10, Section 254, Figure 11, requires driveway slopes within the right-of-way to be downsloped 2% from street pavement. It's shown to be upslope on sheet C4.1, access centerline profile. This matter must be corrected prior to the issuance of any building permit. It is potentially dangerous. It is currently proposed. Number 2, Poplar Street right-of-way improvements pursuant to staff report item number 10A above. A new site plan showing the required right-of-way dedication to the extent possible, but no less than 45 feet. Additionally, requiring compliant paving, shouldering, and ditching shall be shown prior to the issuance of the building permit. Number 3, the lot setback along Poplar Street may need to be reconsidered by the Board of Adjustment prior to the issuance of a building permit due to the required additional right-of-way. Number 4, the applicant may pursue a landscape easement with CDOT for shrubbery to separate the parking lot from the other side of the property line. 5, the applicant shall survey the rim and invert So survey the rim and invert of the inlet on the east side of Poplar, as well as the downstream manhole on the west side of Poplar. The proposed drainage improvements need connected to this pipe. County engineer will need to review and understand the results. Number 6, the public improvements cost estimate will need review and approval by the county engineer. Number 7, a development agreement shall be approved and signed by the applicant and the Board of County Commissioners and recorded prior to the issuance of a building permit. Number 8, the drainage plan comments and questions by the county engineer should be addressed, and the plan should be signed and stamped by a Colorado professional engineer prior to the issuance of the building permit. An overlot grading plan should be submitted with the building permit application. Number 10, the applicant shall supply a reevaluation of the impervious lot cover that excludes any right-of-way dedication on Mountain View Drive and Poplar Street. Number 11 has been stricken. Number 12 is representations and statements made by the applicant in this application and in hearing shall be considered as conditions of approval unless modified by other conditions of approval. And finding that, number 1, that is conditioned the proposed conditional use is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies contained in the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. Number 2, that as conditioned the proposed conditional use conforms to the requirements and provisions of this code. Number 3, that is conditioned adequate public safety, transportation, and utility facilities will be available to serve the subject property while maintaining sufficient levels of service for existing development. Number 4, that is conditioned the proposed conditional use is not likely to be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare of county residents or to cause hardship for neighboring persons. Number 5, that is conditioned the proposed conditional use is consistent with and in harmony with the neighboring land uses and future intended land uses of the area. Number 6, that is conditioned the proposed conditional use will not result in overly intensive use of the land relative to the surrounding land. Number 7, that is conditioned the proposed conditional use will not result in traffic congestion or hazards to vehicular or pedestrian traffic. Number 8, that is conditioned the proposed conditional use will not unnecessarily scar the land on which such use would be located. And number 9, that is conditioned the proposed site of the conditional use is and will be free from natural or man-made hazards. That such hazards can be adequately mitigated.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
No.
Okay, Howard Schutz?
None.
No, I know, but now we're voting on the motion.
Oh, hey.
Joey Edwards?
Yay.
Abby Dahlman?
Aye.
Heather Lind, aye. Okay.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Died.
Yeah, we'll do that.
This one's even better.
Thank you.
Okay, we have file 22-41.
Yeah, Steph would just like to offer a comment to the planning commission, and I'm gonna add this probably to the board, just to share it out. I'm gonna do just a little bit of research, but I just want it to be known that the existing conditional use permit, just in the information that we've gained through the application and what the applicant has shared, is beyond the scope of the existing conditional use permit that is in place right now. I believe that all that was permitted at that time was a yurt, and I know that turned into a cabin somehow. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but I just, the existing CUP, if for any reason we need to go back to that at some point, I don't think it's compliant with what had been allowed. It just seems like the degree of use has increased considerably from what was the intent of the original application.
Does anybody have a motion they'd like to make to start discussion?
Yeah, do you have a question first?
So we can let you speak to staff. Sure. Just because public hearing is closed.
Yeah, I initially applied for a yurt, and it was in this room that the building inspector had said that the yurt wasn't an adequate residence.
Right.
And you could not do snow loads and
all that kind of stuff, and so that's when we switched to cabin, so the cabin is permitted.
Okay,
Under
so
the
it's
state.
not the structure that I'm talking about as much as the degree of use of all of the different activities, the weddings, all of those kind of activities. I don't think any of that was included in the actual first application, and so it's the degree of use.
So the weddings are future, we haven't had weddings.
There's a wedding on your website,
There's the events.
and I
page
thought
says
that you had
becoming.
also said that you had one already.
No, we have one booked for July. There's 25 people.
They're basically
and
renting
they're
the
they're
cabin.
renting
Because
the
you've had
cabin.
yoga
and-
retreats, you've had, I know it's in your application, you've had a
Mhm.
list of things that you've already been doing on site.
Acro picnics.
Um,
We've had a yoga retreat.
Anyway,
To
avalanche
less than 8
education,
people.
yeah, there's just
Right.
been.
All the
some of things.
avalanche education has been less than 8 people.
Okay,
We've strictly adhered to the conditions of the CUP. Which included leasing the BLM parking for it, keeping noise down under 70 decibels. So, yeah, we've not been operating outside of the scope.
Somebody want to make a motion?
It's getting good.
Wow. Conversation on this first?
We can absolutely have some conversation first.
My thoughts in making the motion would be to, I'm actually okay with 70 people, but we could certainly limit it to the 40, 48, 42, 48 number.
Yeah,
What are the,
That's what he
what are the
suggested,
commission's
is
thoughts
48.
on?
yeah, I'd
48
love to
would
get
be-
Abby's thoughts too, because I
Yeah.
think she was not excited about the 70 number either. I think
And that's fine.
my
It's-
perspective would be that I think for what they have, the ability to house people is what we, in my opinion, for this first phase or step, the only thing I would be comfortable with would probably be that.
48. What do you think, Abby?
No, I agree. I don't think, I think avoiding folks leaving in the evening is preferred. And then I think frequency of events is something I don't. Like in reality, do you want 24, 48 person events happening up there? During the summertime? I just think of the other users of the area, like there's a lot of recreation that happens in the summertime up Chalk Creek, so.
and I think that 24 was winter, and summer, my understanding is that would be a much more vibrant time.
Well, that was occupancy, I think. 24 was the occupancy that they would house in the winter.
Okay, that's right.
And 48 is the summer
But
occupancy.
we didn't address the number of events in the conditional approval, did we?
I mean, just slightly in her scenario B and C.
Those are the ones. You could modify that.
Yeah, I like the idea of modifying scenario B to the 50 and then and changing that number.
Or would we just have a scenario B and limit it to 48?
And I guess for clarification purposes, really quick, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, because the way I was originally reading the application was that it can house 48 people, and then you can also have a special event for 150 people. So I don't know if it was ever clear that 48 of those people would be part of the 150 people, or if that was in addition to.
My understanding it would be an included number, not an
I just want to
additional.
make sure that that's how we are reading it, is all I'm trying to say, is that I think that that's not necessarily super clear here, so and I think that that is their intent, but I just for clarification purposes on this. I think it
No,
needs to be addressed. So if you have all of the spaces utilized every weekend, you have 48 people going up there anyway.
Mhm.
Do you see what I'm saying, Abby? So if you have if they utilize that every weekend, whether there's an event or not. So if we're worried about how often there's 48 people there, then we need to be talking about how often it's fully booked, fully
Yeah.
utilized also.
And that is a recreation area. There will be additional people up there. There will be another 48 people up there that have nothing to do with this.
No, right.
So yeah, there will be additional load regardless. My dread is I would strike the shuttle plane entirely. Until that was fleshed out, I don't know that it needs to be included in the application.
Wouldn't it also, like the CDOT access permit with this reduced number, like wouldn't that potentially make it a lot easier for the
Yes.
applicants? I mean, and I know they've been waiting, but like, I feel like we would have generally better clarity and a better ability to review this application with now that it is potentially narrowed down to 48 folks that are staying there. We're not worrying about shuttling. We're not worrying about, I feel like parking is still a little murky, like 8 cars here, 7 cars, I feel like if CDOT was able to respond to this is what we're anticipating, it's more of a come stay events, not a in and out sort of scenario on a nightly basis.
We're already requiring that, aren't we?
Yeah, so we do have that as a condition. So the question would be, as far as, I think what you're hinting at is whether or not we should table it until we hear from CDOT, but is there something CDOT's gonna provide us? It would,
I guess I would think CDOT would, now that if the scope is less, like wouldn't.
They have no likelihood of approving
but my question is more so if I do agree, I think that they're gonna have an easier time getting their access permit, and if our approval, should it be that, is conditioned upon them getting that access permit, the only benefit I see to tabling would be that we're gonna gain some new information from CDOT that would change our opinion.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Now that you say that, I hear you.
And Abby, I think the only thing hinging there would really be the shuttle. And that we're gonna take that entirely off of the table.
Well, I think if they decide to do a shuttle plan, I'm not necessarily opposed to that versus a bunch of people parking on the side of the road.
No, agreed.
So I think if it's more like, and it does say that any shuttle plan there is has to be approved by us, I think we leave that in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the guest operation and safety guide, the reality of that is that a lot of people don't read all of the pieces in that, and I did hear, who was it? Was it Claire? I don't know. Somebody had really pushed that that these people that utilize these places are fully understanding of emergency service or lack thereof. And so I don't know if we can adjust or enhance the wording on number 6 to.
Can you turn that into a signed agreement? Just like a liability waiver.
Yeah, we have a liability.
They do have the waiver. I'm just thinking that, like, again, it's like.
There's, you have a use standard that's very similar to that, that already has. Where's the use standard?
Yeah, it still doesn't mean everybody
It's
reads
just-
it, but it means everybody touched it.
Yeah, I know. I guess I would just urge that there's a little bit more.
Yeah. Understood. Is that covered in this somewhere, Ann?
No, it would be number 6, I think we'd have to.
So do you want that highlighted, or you want that removed because you think are you suggesting removing it?
No.
I'm suggesting that we adjust number 6 to include the statement from SAR that they're fully aware, which I don't feel like signing a super fine print waiver gives you that, that the time from 911 to SAR personnel arriving on scene is typically many hours. And just that people understand that, and the risks involved in that, because, and I know now we're not really talking about big weddings, but it's one thing to like 4-wheel drive Grammy up the hill to the wedding, but it's another thing for them to fully understand that, like, oh, if something happens, it's just done. So I just think that, I think trying to figure out how people can just be aware of that, and I'm sure that the applicant's hearing me say what I'm saying and knows what I'm talking about, as far as if there's some way to really highlight that for people, I think that would be helpful. I just don't know how to write that in a condition.
They do have to, it says, you could just change it to, the applicant shall create a guest operation and safety guide and provide a copy of the guide to CPD prior to operation. So, we could administrate, they're hearing what you'd like to have in it. And so it could be something that we approve before it goes into use.
So that's something that you could do administratively and doesn't have to be included here.
Yeah.
Well, we can add that it's approved by, not just provide a copy.
Right, instead of not just provide a copy, that it does have
approved by CBD.
And you could certainly have with an emphasis on situational awareness for participants or something.
Yeah, I like that. Emphasis on situational awareness. Okay.
What else?
Chris, go ahead. Chris Floyd, can you hear us? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
sorry, I thought I'd unmuted. I was just going to say, I would request that approval not just by CPD, but by the county attorney as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we were gonna change number 7 to include water. Where did I write that? Like I said, I wrote it. Oh, it's right here. Okay, it just wasn't on the conditions list. Okay.
By the Board of County Health and.
And then, water supply plan approved by either Public Health or Division of Water Resources.
Okay. Reviewed on an annual basis, blah, blah, blah. I was just trying to see if there's anything else in here that we had to worry about.
How do you want to modify number 4?
Number 4,
You just want to do a single scenario?
Abby, did you have a thought on if you wanted to limit the number? Or are we just gonna say the total occupants?
Yeah, do you want?
No.
Time.
I think it's that 24 in the summer and 48 in the winter.
When we're talking participants versus events.
I think she wants 24 occupants in the winter and 48 in the summer, okay. And then,
And then I'm just assuming the events are just tied to the occupants staying there, correct? Like the folks attending the events are the folks that are staying there.
and then did you want to put any limiting quantity on that? How many, I mean, you brought up the,
So special events shall be limited to special event
Or tied to occupancy,
shall be
right?
limited to host to, I mean, I'm trying to say participants.
And
Lodging on site.
just to clarify, Abby, you're not requiring every participant to overnight, are you? What if some of them were spending the night, but some of them were only there for day use? Still limiting the number of participants. Does that make sense?
I don't see, I guess maybe it'd be helpful to just talk about scenarios. So if it's a wedding, I would assume everyone that is attending the wedding is staying there to avoid exceeding that 48 number. If
Well,
it's a yoga retreat, then it's something that's, I mean, this is where I just would like the, you know, like, I'm not the business person. I feel like, I think 70 is too many. I think 150 is too many. I don't,
We can base the number on 48 because that's the number that they could accommodate.
Yes,
But I think making it required that the people there have to overnight is onerous. What if they're having a day-long mushroom seminar and they have 48 people there, but the 48 people don't necessarily, they have accommodations for them, but they don't necessarily spend the night? What if they just do a day event? Or you do a wedding where half of the people are staying somewhere else?
Right, and at no point can occupancy be more than the 48 people.
Right. At no point.
So
can
if you
attendance
just
be
are
more.
saying, yeah.
I guess how is that different than there being, so if there's 48 people staying there at night, and there's a 48 person event happening during the day, that's
It's the same, the number is the same. It's not 48 and 48, it's 48 total. 48 maximum occupancy, whether they're
At
staying
any
there or
time.
not.
okay.
So not
okay.
doubling your number.
So, okay, so then if it's just a day event and there's six folks going to that event, then that means there's not 6 heads in the bed that night.
Necessarily.
They could be, they could not be, but at any time, the property is only hosting a max of 48 people at one time.
so they put an occupancy limit.
An occupancy limit on the whole place.
Okay.
And I think we do have to be careful of how we word it, that it's not just special events are limited to that, it's just max occupancy for the property, whether for events or lodging, is capped at 48 in the summer, 24 in the winter.
And avoid the special events.
And then avoid the conversation of what they're there for.
Yeah.
And I guess to clarify, 48 guests, not including employees and
Yes.
humans.
Yes.
Sure.
So,
Sure. Yeah, not including support staff.
right. Does that feel okay?
That makes sense.
Okay.
I just have a question on 15. Do they have to do temporary special use permits still with the Forest Service, or if they have this?
Yes, they'll have to do a temporary use permit for the, that's for the Packboro picnic. And so they'll have to continue permitting that, but they indicate that they have renewed that. So they'll have to continue, but that's for, because they utilize Forest Service property for that, and they already renewed that, so.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
Alright, this is.
Votes.
Yes. Just trying to think of how you're gonna word that.
Right.
Max occupancy of guests. Okay. So, nice scribbling that's.
You okay with that?
And if you're okay with trying to read that.
Yeah.
I'll do my best to that. Any other comments, Abby?
And we'll still have discussion after the motion, too.
Okay, I move that the planning commission recommend conditional approval to the Board of County Commissioners of file number 24-41, a conditional use permit for a special event facility located at 6971 Fire Service Road 134, pursuant to the standards of section 5.2.28, use and standards for a special event facility. Further finding that the approval criteria pursuant to Lake County Land Development Code, section 3.6.1F, have been met as evidenced in the staff report dated March 27, 2023, for file number 22-41 and conditioned as follows. An approved access permit from CDOT. CDOT number 2, a CDOT approved safety plan if event staff is ever guiding vehicles onto Highway 91. Number 3, there shall be no outside alcohol allowed at any event. This shall be communicated in all marketing and advertising. Any alcohol provided on site is subject to the state of Colorado off-premises liquor licensing requirements as administered by the Lake County Clerk and Recorder. If an off-premises liquor license is approved, all servers must be TIPS trained with a record of such available for review. All alcohol sales shall end strictly 1.5 hours before the end of on-site events. Max occupancy of guests shall be 48 people in the summer season and 24 people in the winter season. Number 5, any shuttle plan must be approved by Community Planning and Development, CPD, prior to operation. The plan must include the parking area along with any required permissions or approvals, a contract with the business providing the service, an overall operational plan, and any other information the department may deem necessary. Number 6, the applicant shall create a guest operation and safety guide approved by the county attorney and county planning and development prior to operations. The guide must include a 24-hour available emergency contact. The guest operation and safety guide must have emphasis on site awareness. Number 7, prior to operations, the applicant must provide County Planning and Development with approved sanitary waste management plan, which has been approved by the Board of Health as applicable, and a water supply plan approved by either public health or the Director of Water Resources, the Division of Water Resources. Forgive me. Number 8, the conditional use permit shall be reviewed on an annual basis administratively with the ability for the Director of CPD to elevate the review to the Board of County Commissioners. The applicant shall furnish an annual report due by January 31st of each year, which includes but is not limited to A, general standard operation report for the year in review, B, total number and types of events for the year, C, total number of attendees for each event, D, records of all tips servers with proofs of certifications, E, records of all staff, emergency and medical certifications. F, status of improvements. And G, safety incident record. A report of any safety incidents to include but not limited to, number 1, any controlled or uncontrolled fire incident. Number 2, any calls to 911 for service, including request for assistance from fire, EMS, sheriff, and search and rescue. Number 3, injuries treated on site to include A, the description, B, treatment given, C, cause of injury, and D, action taken to reduce further risk. The annual review may result in a recommendation from CPD to the Board of County Commissioners to include but not limited to increase or decrease degree of use, recommend additional review, or recommendation for consideration of revocation. If an annual report is not received by February 15th of every subsequent year, the permit holder will be considered in default and subject to enforcement. Number 9, prior to any building permits or improvements on site, the applicant must make application for site plan review. Number 10, through the site plan review process, the applicant shall have the environmentally sensitive areas identified. Identified areas should be protected by restricting public access, including but not limited to areas like wetlands located near the stage location. Number 11, all structures are subject to the Lake County Building Code and permit requirements. Number 12, prior to operations, the applicant must provide CPD with an on-site fire protection plan approved by the Leadville Lake County Fire and Rescue, which may be subject to annual review. 13, the operation shall remain compliant with all use-specific standards 5.2.28. Any alcohol or substance recovery events shall be approved prior to scheduling by CPD. At a minimum, the applicant should contractually engage with a drug and alcohol recovery medical professional, along with approval and coordination of Lake County Public Health. Additional requirements may be applied. Number 15, the temporary special use permit issued by the Forest Service is expired. Permit must be renewed or reapplied for as applicable prior to any continued permitted activity. Number 16, prior to operations, the applicant shall provide a letter from CPW confirming that all impacts shall or will be properly mitigated to CPD. All statements made by the applicant with the application and hearing shall be considered conditions of approval. And finding that, number 1, that is conditioned the proposed conditional use is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies contained in the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. Number 2, that as conditioned, the proposed conditional use conforms to the requirements and provisions of this code. Number 3, that as conditioned, adequate public safety, transportation, and utility facilities will be available to serve the subject property while maintaining sufficient levels of service for existing development. Number 4, that as conditioned, the proposed conditional use is not likely to be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare of county residents or to cause hardship for neighboring persons. Number 5, that is conditioned, the proposed conditional use is consistent with and in harmony with neighboring land uses and future intended land uses in the area. Number 6, that is conditioned, the proposed conditional use will not result in overly intensive use of the land relative to the surrounding land. Number 7, that is conditioned, the proposed conditional use will not result in traffic congestion or hazards to vehicular or pedestrian traffic. Number 8, that is conditioned, the proposed conditional use will not unnecessarily scar the land on which such use would be located. And number 9, that is conditioned, the proposed site of the conditional use is and will be free from natural or man-made hazards, or that such hazards can and will be adequately mitigated.
Work. Do we have a second? All right, any discussion on the motion? Howard Tritz,
Aye.
Joey Edwards,
Aye.
Abby Dahlman,
Aye.
Heather Lind, aye. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for making that a 4-hour meeting.
Abby.
3 hours and 15 minutes. Even better.
I know you. I hope you start feeling better.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, hopefully that wasn't too annoying or distracting, all the cleanup.
Sincerely, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us anyway.
Yeah.
you.
You guys have a good evening.
All right, you too. Bye. Oh, we're adjourned. Make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second. Aye, everybody.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks for being workable. And very good job.
Oh, we could, yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome.